I'm Roy, Aquavitae, and I am a whiskey botherer. That's the first of many confessions tonight. We're going to be talking about soft confessions. These aren't big deals, really, but I think it is something that we expose ourselves to a wee bit of judgment for. Listen, if I'm up for it, I hope the rest of you are too. There's been lots of feedback from the community. We're going to talk about our accumulation. We're going to talk about our inevitable glass lochs that build up as we chase the flavour and the wonderful thing that is malt whiskey and any kind of whiskey, honestly. We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about my collection. I'm going to confess to you what I've overaccumulated, and throughout this evening, I'll also share with you what my top five biases are, my top five favourites, my top five things that have been betrayed by my shelves. I've just done a bottle count, and there are some that I'm collecting more than others. That and so much more. I'm looking forward to tonight, as always. I'll see you all in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the vPub. I was just getting some whiskey in the glass there, and I didn't want anybody to see what that bottle was as I was doing it. How you all doing? Welcome to Thursday night. Welcome to another vPub. I hope you're all sitting comfortably. I hope you've got something in the glass, and if not, I hope you're looking forward to having something in the glass a wee bit later. Welcome if you're very welcome if you're picking this up live, like so many of you are right now. It's fantastic to see you all here. It's fantastic to have the support. But if you're picking up this on the replay, like so many of you do, thank you so much. It means so much to me. Wonderful to have your support. Back in 2022, we predicted as a community here, we predicted the slowdown that was going to arrive in 2023 and spill over into 2024 last year. Through polling the community and kind of getting a bit of a temperature check from all of you guys, you started to express, let's say, your frustration with the kind of dynamics that were at play in whiskey, a lot of overheating in the market, a lot of price inflation, a lot of kind of greedflation, maybe, we don't know. There was just a lot of things going on that suggested that we were all going to take a stand and slow down a little bit. And we just kind of skipped on to the next vPub and the next vPub after that and continued and didn't think much about it. And until 2023 demonstrated to us all that things had slowed down quite a bit. And that was compounded during 2024. During the winter of 2023 to 24, we had another session to talk about the glass loch and all of these things that I'm going to touch upon briefly tonight. You might remember I invited Andre Habrecht on to join me and to talk about these things. It was pretty interesting as well. And what we were able to do is we were able to then poll the community once more, and you were absolutely adamant that you were going to stop buying whiskey, you were going to slow down, shrink your collections and drink what you had on hand. You were not participating in the prices and some of the things that you didn't agree with happening in whiskey at that point in time. Now, we caveat everything that we're going to share tonight as being very, very soft data, and go as far to say that it can't be anything more than anecdotal. Why is that? Well, because I've just polled my community, the people that hang out here on the vPub, and they're just kind of absolutely anonymously. I didn't collect any data. If you've left your name next to your comments or feedback, that was your choice. You didn't need to do that in order to participate in the poll that I'm going to be reporting on throughout tonight. It's just really some soft feedback from all of you guys. But if we read into the previous two polls that we've covered throughout this series, talking about the glass loch, hoarding, overaccumulation, all of those things, and these specific vPubs, it's pretty accurate. And it does seem to betray the feelings and the sentiment of the whiskey enthusiast community. Always remember that we are We are much smaller in numbers compared to the mass market that is whiskey. The vast majority of whiskey drinkers are not us. The vast majority of whiskey drinkers are people that are just enjoying it really quite casually, much like we would enjoy anything else in life. But we are into it and we understand it, and we seek knowledge and flavour and quality moments with it. We go a lot deeper than the casual whiskey drinker. We evangelise about it, we share it, we talk about it loudly, we become whiskey botherers, and maybe some of us become whiskey bores too. It's just what we are. But I am going to suggest to you that we also provide, through that pursuit, those pursuits, that we provide a good feedback stream, a good metric, another place for people who are interested to collect data and feeling and mood. Anyway, that's the plan tonight. Throughout tonight, I'm going to share with you some of the results back from your polls. I'm not going to dwell on the kind of charts and things. It's a wee bit dull, I think. It's not, I don't know how good viewing it is. Having said that, you seem to be quite happy sitting here watching and listening to me. So it's maybe better than that. But throughout tonight, I'm going to sprinkle my 5 confessions, and that is the 5 whiskies after a bottle count that I did over the last week, the top 5 that I have accumulated. They're all distilleries, none of them are brands. They are all individual distilleries, and they are somewhat surprising, but not completely. In fact, I'll suggest that you can probably guess what my 5 are. Let's see how that goes throughout tonight. So I'll sprinkle that throughout tonight as well. But right at the end of tonight, I'm going to just share with you exactly the bottle count I've got on hand and lay myself bare to the judgment that that's inevitably going to bring. Because whatever you think it is, it's probably going to be somewhat higher. I thought I knew where it was, and it was somewhat higher. A lot higher, actually. But we'll get to that, and that'll be the final confession tonight before we go into the quiz at the end. But there's lots to talk about in the in-between times. Hope you're all comfortable. I'm going to shout out Angus Grains, who's just joined Aquavitae Barflies. Thank you, Angus. Thank you for your support. Thanks for stepping up. Along with Codger, who's celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 15 months. Thank you, Codger, for your support. Happy wet February to one and all. Right back at you, Codger. So Angus and Codger, the two of those guys, are part of the Barfly community here. They've clicked the join button, the YouTube membership button, on desktop or Android. You can't do it through Apple because Apple are Apple. But through desktop, you can do it, and you can become an Aquavitae Barfly, and you get access to channel emoji and little loyalty badges and things. But the biggest benefit for everyone is that I don't split ad revenue with Google anymore. They can keep their ads, and I don't want to see ads next to Aquavitae content whatsoever. That's thanks to the Barflies. Thank you all so much for your support. My main revenue stream still, to this day, by far and away, comes from all the amazing people that take the extra step to go into Patreon and search for me as Aquavitae on Patreon. I think it's linked somewhere on YouTube, but I should be a bit more brazen about it, I know, but that's where my support comes from, and that's why I'm able to do this thing with you every week. That's where I earn. Thank you all so much. Thank you to my beautiful patrons and Barflies too. Thank you all. James DeJulio has bought me a special dram as well. Thank you very much, James. He's saying first time in a while live and only in for a short time till the replay. I know you're going off to see a concert. I was picking up some comments earlier, James. To Angus, to Codger, to James, I hope you enjoy yourself at the concert tonight. And Steve Brogan celebrating being a member for 26 months too, saying got off work early and can actually watch live. Well, here's to getting off work a wee bit early, Steve. Thank you. Sorry, Shane. It's Shane Brogan. Thanks to you all for your terrific support. Cheers. And while you're pouring your drams, getting comfortable, settling in, while people are remembering that it's that time on a Thursday, you're all taking your time, I'll do what I always do and jump into the chat and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated Barflies. Cesare, good to see you, buddy. He said, Evening Roy patrons and everyone, all whiskey fans, I see a replay vPub. I caught some flu. Have a good night. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry to hear that you're not so well, Cesare. I hope you do manage to pick it up on the replay, buddy, and I hope you get well soon. Sláinte, literally. Cheers to you. That's a wee shame. Max Kreitner is in saying, good evening, my friend. Great to be here tonight. The vPub is very well needed this week. Indeed it is, Max. Listen, I'll throw my heart out to you, my friend. You are a dear friend of mine, and I know you're going through some difficult times right now. We've had a wee quiet word offline, but know that not just me, but a lot of your friends in this community are at your side right now, buddy, thinking of you. Cheers, Max. To the family as well, buddy. Anthony Lambert is saying, Aguvidi, nice to be in live again after 3 weeks of being ill. Spent a lot of time in bed and haven't touched the dram this year. Hoping tonight gives me an appetite back. Fingers crossed. There's a lot of people been quite poorly recently. I'm sorry to hear it. I hope that you're all coming back to health quite quickly. Dan DVDW is saying it's Speyburn, Glasgow, Springbank, Brookladdy, and Loch Lomond. Dan, you've got one of those right. Surprising, right? Whisky 101 is saying, yes, that's me, Roy. I am into collecting data and hoarding whiskey. Is it a glass loch? No, I'm into data analytics, and this is my thesis project. You listen, we've all got ways to justify it and dress it, Nick, and that sounds just as good as any other. Fantastic. Whiskey and Wine Trails Thomas saying, cheers, Roy. Only 275 days till the Glasgow Whisky Festival. No bottle buys until then. Saving your pennies to come over and join us again this year, Tom. Now, that's amazing to me. You were here in 2023. The fact that you're coming back again for another visit tells us a lot, doesn't it? Jeff is saying, Jeff Whiskey is saying, are we taking bets here, Aquaviti? I'm going for 14 bottles. Okay, yeah. I think you might have missed at least one digit there. Whiskey Hog is saying, what is over-accumulation? And he's having a laugh. Absolutely. I like the spirit. Exactly. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of kind of just giving ourselves a break tonight, understanding that this is not something to become stressed about. If you're overstretching yourself in terms of consumption, in terms of spending, in terms of, you know, you can't move around your room or your house anymore because of bottles, then it could be a problem. But if you're managing it, and if you're having fun enjoying your hobby, don't let anybody tell you you're doing it wrong if all other things are protected. Ralph Metier is in. Good to see you, Ralph. He's saying good evening. I'm guessing 512 bottles, says Ralph. I think we're going to be playing a guessing game throughout tonight, Ralph. Keep a note of that, and I'll share with you at the end of the stream tonight, buddy. Drew from Arizona is saying, I have a confession too, Aquavite. I may have bought a second bottle of that special fragrant drops and had it sent directly to Arizona. My goodness. So Drew's been after this specific North British that I opened on the single grain vPub a couple of weeks ago. And he reached out to me and I managed to secure him a bottle. But of course, it's sitting here, boxed up, waiting for the next time that there's a mule. You know that there's only 275 days before Tom visits us, Drew, so you know that you're not going to have to wait for it much longer than a year. I'm sure that Tom can mule it back to the US for you. Ginger Genius is saying, good evening, Roy, and all the barflies. Good to have you in, John. I hope you're keeping well. And Timo Lenin is in saying something from Glasgow Distillery, perhaps. Well, what we're talking about tonight, Timo, is not individual bottles. What I've done is done a bottle count of my collection, which, as I say, I'll share with you at the end. But through that, the amount of bottles on my shelf from specific distilleries betray my preference, my bias, my leaning, the things that I seem to be accumulating more of. And I think that's important to be aware of that, not just for me to be aware of it and that I've got this amount of those bottles, but you to be aware of it too. So when you hear me talking about these things, do I really love these things? Because if I really do love these things, then it makes sense that I should accumulate them as much as you guys do. So you would expect them to be there. But also on the flip side of that, if you hear me talking about these things effusively, you know that I'm speaking about one of my pet distilleries, one of the things that I'm drawn to, one of the things that I've learned to love very much, one of the things that I've spent a lot of money on. So it's nice for you to be aware of those things as well. It's not too deep. It's not really that deep. It's only my top 5. It's just a vPub. But I think it's a good thing to talk about. It's nice to have you in, Timo. Cesare, I picked up your comment, didn't I, buddy? Just as the chat resets and jumps all the way back down to the bottom, which is absolutely fine. And Whisky Veritas is in. Good to see you, buddy. How are you keeping? Sipping the Dornoch X Ila cask fatting. We tried it at the Bonaccord a couple of weeks ago. A great night. Thank you. See you at the Indie Festival in Leith. Oliver, you're coming back up again to join us on the 15th of March. Listen, if anybody is planning to go to the Independent Spirits Festival in Leith in Edinburgh on Saturday, the 15th of March. Get your finger out and get a ticket now, please. There aren't many left. It's been a kind of slow burn since it was announced. You know, it's just been accumulating. We got a wee report, a wee share out today that the tickets are starting to become quite thin on the ground, especially if you're going to see the film. If you want to see the film and the festival, it might have sold out already. There's literally a handful left. And then there's a few more to go and visit the festival, but it's still in very, very small numbers now. So if you are planning to do that, don't delay or dwell. I cannot. It's not like the Glasgow Festival where I'm aware of where there might be extra tickets around. It's completely different for this festival. Just get your hands on your tickets as soon as you possibly can. Looking forward to seeing you, Oliver. Nice to have you in again. Jimmy Legg is here. Of course you are, Jimmy. Using the camera I hid in your office when I was there last, I can see 622 bottles. So he's taken Ralph's bid and he's increased it by about 110. That's quite a bit of a jump, isn't it, Jimmy? You're a wee bit off. David Hong is saying, has bought me a wee dram. No comments as well. David Hong tends to just buy me a wee quiet, discreet dram. Thank you very much, buddy. Thanks to Jimmy Legg as well for the generous dram. Thanks, David. And thanks, Jimmy. A wee like, and I'll go back up for a wee like on James DeGiulio's dram as well. Thank you. Thank you to you all. So I hope you're all comfortable. I need to share, probably to open up, my first distillery. My first, can we call it a confession? I'm going to share what my most hoarded is, and I'm going to go from my fifth most hoarded to my first. So we'll start at the number 5. I suspect not a lot of you are going to guess this, but if you have been watching this channel, especially since the beginning, it'll make itself obvious to you in that way. I'm going to be talking a lot tonight about the way I buy whiskey, the reasons for me buying whiskey, the kind of projects that I do. I think there was 1 week in 2024, and 1 week alone, I bought 24 bottles of whiskey, and that was for a very, very specific thing. You might remember that, okay, I was buying for upcoming projects because there was tastings and events I was hosting, but I was also buying a lot of whiskey for the 2 top 10 vPubs I did back in 2024. A lot of those low ABV, core range, top 10 selling whiskies globally, these were things that I didn't have on the shelf, and I was going out and buying them. Now, it wasn't a lot of money, accumulated a lot. It ended up being a lot of money. Some of these were £28, whereas others were £50. And, you know, it did add up quite a bit. But I can't comment and critique all of these whiskies out there in the whiskey sphere unless I'm connecting with those whiskies. You know, I can't say that this natural 15-year-old at 46% and unchill filtered is much better than this 10-year-old, which is 40% and chill filtered and things. I can't do that unless I'm buying and getting to know the 10-year-old 40% bottle as well, which was part of the reason for doing those vPubs last year. But then there's been other weeks and even indeed months where I've maybe only accumulated 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe a handful of bottles. But I suspect that there will be very, very few of you in the vPub tonight that are buying whiskey at the rate that I'm buying whiskey. Understand, throughout tonight I'll be caveating this. It's very much down to what I do. Reb is in. Good to see you, Reb. Reb Mordecai is saying, I recently had some insurance assessor round. He insured only the closed bottles, but said I need to secure them against earthquakes. How do I do that? Wrap them in bubble wrap is the best you can do. Yeah, I don't have many sealed bottles, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Danny Habington is saying, I'll hazard a guess Roy's count is about 945 bottles. So Danny's going really quite high there. 945. I wonder if you would judge me, Danny, if it was up as high as that. Keith McKenzie is in. Good to see you, Keith. How are you doing? Flora and Fauna, Roy. Oh, I've actually weaned myself off the Flora and Fauna a little bit, and I haven't actually counted, Keith. It's a good point. It does a brand, but to guess, I would say I've only got 6 or 8 of those on hand just now, I would say. Hellswood is saying currently running only 3 new bottles this year. That may change when we get to Edinburgh and Leith. She's having a wee laugh. And Fernando's saying, hello, evening, Roy. And dear Barflies, hope you're all doing good. How many of us are in? 362. Building up nicely here. I think it's about right time, is it not, Helen? I want you all to charge your glasses, raise them high, and wish one of our long-standing Barflies, dare I call him an elder of the channel? Okay, let's just go with it. One of the elders of the channel, I'm sure I'm offending him right now, but I'll no doubt tickle Helen, raise a glass and wish a very happy birthday tomorrow to our pal, our long-term Barfly, and good egg, Andy. Many happy returns, fella. I hope tomorrow is a great, great day. It's nice to have a birthday on a weekend too. Many happy returns, Andy Widdowson. Most of Andy's comments is channeled through Helen. Occasionally you might see him appear here and there at different events and things like that. But him and Helen tend to be comfy on the couch, tuning in and enjoying a wee dram with us all. Good to have you, Fernando. I did pick up your comment there suggesting that you were a wee bit late today. There's no such thing as late on the vPub, Fernando. It's always nice to have you in. And Andy can really spin a kilt, Aquavite, says Jimmy Legg. Indeed he can, yeah. An Englishman from Milton Keynes, quite happy to dress up in the tartan. And they're planning a wee move north of the border too. Greg in Paris is saying a quick hi to Roy and Aquavite and everyone in listening mode, because I'm busy writing notes about a recent whiskey tasting, so don't be mad at me if not answering right away. Cheers. Nobody's ever mad at you, Greg. We know the drill. Don't worry about it, my friend. Nice to have you in. Arnie Doodle the Dram saying, good evening, Aquavite. I had a wee fright counting 51 bottles in less than a year. All open, however, and no regret buys yet. That's critical, Arnie. You know, I overuse words. I get words in my head and overuse them, and I know that it can be a bit of a tick. The way my head works, I suppose, the way I'm wired. One of the words is pragmatism. I love the word because it's not me letting myself off the hook by being pragmatic, but a wee bit like Arnie just being kind of like, okay, I've discovered whiskey. I'm loving it and I've gone nuts for it and I've accumulated 50 bottles in a year. So a bottle a week. For those of us in our most acute moments especially, we know that that is not ridiculous. There are hobbies out there that we can, tech hobbies, classic cars, fishing, golf, 101 other hobbies that we can easily spend lots and lots of money on once we fall down the rabbit hole. And whiskey's no different. I think the only thing that we need to be mindful of is the fact that it is alcohol and we're continue to consume it responsibly. But if you're anything like me, discovering whiskey actually helped you to slow down your relationship with alcohol because it became much more about sipping and tasting and savouring rather than drinking. And I found it a huge benefit for me. It's not one size fits all. It's different for everyone, of course. But Arnie, I appreciate your pragmatism, and it's great that you don't have any regrets yet. This is not a regret that's in my glass right now, but it's fairly pedestrian to a lot of you. But I'll share with you now what my most hoarded bottle is. Position number 5 is a distillery. It's a Highland distillery, and you can probably tell by the tall, slim neck of this official bottling. And for each of the 5, I've got an official bottle out here that I'll put up in front of the screen, but I've also got a wee independent bottle that I might treat myself to as well. This was just the official bottling I put in the glass to open up for tonight. I've got 5 glasses in front of me that are still clean. That gives me 6 drams for the night, and that way I know if I don't refill a dirty glass, I know that on a Thursday night, kind of a school night, I know that I'm sticking to 6 drams and I'm being mindful of what I'm consuming. This, you might not be surprised to see, is Clynelish. So my most hoarded distillery in 5th position is Clynelish. Now, for those of you that have been around for quite a while, you'll know that I've had always a wee bit of a fetish for Clynelish. I'll go as far to suggest that maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that number that you see on screen right now, this number here, 8-7 split, would have been higher. 8 is the number of bottles that are open, and 7 is the number of bottles that are sealed. And I'm going to share that with you throughout tonight. So not a huge amount, that's 15 bottles. But for those of you out there that only have a collection of a couple of handfuls, a dozen, or maybe 15 bottles, to have 15 bottles from one distillery seems ridiculous. And I'm sitting here saying it might have been more at some certain points in time. I've been sipping and collecting whiskey, and I say collecting with a small c, collecting a selection rather than collecting a collection. There is a subtle difference between the two. And I think people, when they collect a collection, they're trying to collect a series or maybe aim for some kind of completionist goal or something. I am not. It's a selection because they're all getting opened at some point in time. I can think of maybe 2, 3, 4 bottles in my whole collection that's unlikely that I'll ever want to open. Bottle number 1, obviously, and bottles that are my own releases, aquavitae bottlings, things like that. Kind of special things that we know and understand exactly what they taste like. There's no real value to opening these things. They're mementos, but that's very, very few. Clynelish, I have 8 bottles open, of which one of them is that a core range 14-year-old. And here's another one that opened on a vPub. So grateful to have this open because it's absolutely gorgeous. This is a signatory vintage 1995 Clynelish. It was bottled in 2017 at 21 years old, 55.5% ABV. My lucky number 5. So 55 is a popular wee bottling strength. It doesn't mean anything. It's not particularly perfect for any particular malt brand or distillery. 55 is just my kind of thing. But this is delicious. So I can put my wee official 14-year-old, 46% direct from Diageo. Still very, very good value. We wish it was natural. We wish it was unchill filtered. We wish they didn't add colour to it. But Diageo are still focused on that legacy of whiskey that was originally came around because of the blend market, honestly speaking. And they haven't really shifted anything towards more consideration for malt since. Still stuck in the past a wee bit. We don't care because we can occasionally pick up that 14-year-old at great, great value prices. This signatory 1995 is a completely different kettle of fish. Everything is exposed here, all the honey, a slight wee farmy note here that I don't know if I've picked up before on this. Lovely, bright and fresh, honeycomb, orchard fruit, maybe even a wee creaminess. Despite the much higher ABV, you can still get your nose in, no problem. Quite amazing. When I first started to sip whiskey and specifically getting into Clynelish and trying to understand what wax and a wax was, was it a smell? Was it a taste? Was it a texture? What was this waxy thing about Clynelish? And the answer to that is yes. It is quite often for me a kind of almost a white candle wax nose. You can have a kind of waxy flavour and certainly you can have a kind of waxy texture. And there's definitely a wee bit of that here. This is from a refill butt. It's better if you can get it from ex-bourbon. In my experience, if you're seeking that waxy note, but this is exquisite whiskey. I think it's even better now that it's been open for a few months. Start to sing. It's difficult when you pick up a glass like this and you taste liquid like this. It's kind of tough to go back to enjoying the official bottling, you know, but with a wee bit of diligent effort, we can manage. Anyway, I don't know what you think of that. 8 bottles open, 7 bottles sealed, 15 bottles total. The numbers build quite quickly as I go through this list tonight. That's great whiskey. The Hogsheads, that's Alex. Good to see you. Saying, looking forward to the rest of the countdown on the replay so I can dram along. Sadly, got to be up early. Whiskey doesn't make itself. Where are you now, Alex? Where are you working these days? It's nice to have you in, buddy. Alex, the last time I met him face-to-face, he was working up on Isla Rassy. And Gordon Burniston is here. Good to see you again, Gordon. It was nice to meet you a couple of weeks ago too. What did you make of the 20-year-old Thompson Brothers Clynelish a few weeks back? Fustiest dram I've tasted to date. Wasn't my take on Clynelish. I was probably one of the half of the room that would have been glad and grateful to taste it. but probably wouldn't have bought a bottle of that specific Clynelish. That is a slightly odd Clynelish to me, a bit of a quirky one. But you saw from the other half of the room who thought it was fantastic, right? And that's the wonderful thing about whiskey. Sevi was, I need to find this, I need to find this. It was a 2020 bottling, so it's long gone. Glad you enjoyed it though, Gordon. Danny Hebington is saying, I just picked up bottles 10 and 11 of the year today. Just can't help myself sometimes. So you're already in to double figures at the start of February, Danny. You're ahead of me this year. Be careful, big guy. You might find yourself in trouble. I think you're ahead of me this year. I'm not sure, but I feel like you are. And Jimmy Legg is saying, how many of the Clynelish are independent bottlings? I have only 3 official bottlings up. That's not true because one of them's Flora and Fauna, so that's 4. So 2 14-year-olds, 1 open, 1 sealed. One of the distiller editions, which are no longer available, I don't think. So that's 4 out of 15. But you make a good point, Jimmy. If we want to enjoy Clynelish these days, it tends to be independent bottlers. Even Barflies and Roy says, Tim Pills, good to have you in, Tim. The Ginger Genius, John is saying, Roy, is the Game of Thrones Clynelish any good? It wasn't bad. It was one of the Game of Thrones releases that was released at higher ABV. So that's number 5 because there's still an open bottle up there and it's part of the count. Apologies, Jimmy Legg. 5 official Clynelish. I'm quite surprised. I think it was 50 point something or 51 or 52. One of the higher ABV ones. It made everyone excited that it might have been non-chill filtered, but of course, Diageo, they would have chill filtered it still. But it was still one of the picks of the Game of Thrones releases. The great thing about it is that people were picking it up for absolute buttons because there was so much of it around. There was great bargains available on that. And it's, don't trip over yourself trying to seek it out. It was fine. That's the best way I could put it. Stephen Wilson bought me a dram to say, just recently recovered my sense of smell and taste from contracting late COVID in 2022. Oh my God, Stephen. Although not 100% thankful for what has come back. Well, do you know what? That's been horrible for you, Stephen. But for a lot of people out there, from late 2022 until today, you're talking over 2 years of being without your sense of taste and smell. That must have been horrendous for you, buddy, especially as a lover of whiskey. Stephen, I'll raise this glass to you and say, here's to continued improvement and getting that back again. I can't imagine what life must have been like for you. I'm not just talking about being without whiskey. Cheers, Stephen. That's horrendous. Gino Camo is in. Graham Young is in. Fantastic. David Evans is in. All celebrating being members of the Aquavitae Barflies. David is saying, evening, drinking Forset Distillery single malt. Forset Distillery? David, you need to tell me more. It's a brand I haven't even come across before. It's tough to keep up. And Graham Young in Canada saying, cheers, Roy. I'm thinking 832 bottles and 75% opened. Okay, so he's taken was it Danny Hebington's count? I put 900 odd and he's attenuated a bit down to 832. And Gino Camo is saying, here I am thinking 782 with 75% open. Cheers. I can tell you that Graham is a bit closer than you are, Gino. Ellsworth is saying, Andy says a huge thanks, Barflies. Slant you right back at you, Helen and Andy, the birthday boy himself. In fact, Helen, if you can bully Andy to stay till the quiz at the end, he'll actually click into his birthday hanging out with all of us. David Evans, sorry, it was Forest. Okay, still Forest Distillery single malt. I'm still a wee bit lost, David. But thanks for the Forset. A wee bit of that's my typing tick that you've got there. Alistair McPhail's in. Good to see you, buddy. I bought 17 bottles during dry January. Sorry. Oh, Alistair. So that's brilliant. So you can be absolutely legitimate and have a dry January right up until Burns night and not have a sip. But the bug is still eating, right? It's just 17 bottles. People. Sorry, I don't know why I'm so tickled by that. That's terrific. Timo is saying, thanks, I'll come back to replay. Just rock and Roy. Thank you very much, Timo, and welcome back now that you're picking this up on the replay, buddy. Tim Pills is saying, 2 of the best Clynelish bottles I've ever had over the last few years have been from Whisky Sponge Aquavitae. I don't doubt it. Angus is brilliant at picking a bottle. there's a few independent bottlers out there that we can all just relax and buy blind because of their cookie trail of excellent bottlings. They're never anything less than interesting, and they're very often top drawer picks. And I would suggest to you that Whiskey Sponge is one of those. Gordon Fraser is in. Good to see you, buddy. It's all green screen, 10 bottles max. Oh, so what are we talking about there? It's all green screen. 10 bottles max. I see. Okay, what you're talking about is behind me here. It's all green screen. Right. Okay. My brain is a wee bit slow. I think I don't know when you were last in this room, Gordon, but it was a couple of years ago. I think you might get and take a wee gasp of air. Stefan Novak is in. Good to see you, buddy. And nice to have my pal Stefan from Germany. And then Hels is saying he'll be there till the bitter end, lol. Okay, that sounds like you're not going anywhere, Andy. You've been told. And Chris Everwind is saying, I have about 100 bottles these days, 75% open, maybe, but many are old as I am. Precious with most, unless they are perma-shelf. But that's a pretty decent ratio, I would say, for people in our community, I would think. I know a lot of people try to manage their open bottles and keep it a bit lower, but that's pretty healthy, Chris. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying dry January. Between December and January with my salary bonus, I probably bought over 15 bottles too. It's okay. Confessions of a whiskey botherer, Greg, right? Don't feel bad, Aquaviti. Gordon thinks Isle of Skye fast. That's right. He does. He's in Isle of Skye time. And Ian Bruce is saying good evening, Roy, and all the butterflies. Good to have you in, Ian. Okay, let's share with you this poll that I put out to the community. Let's start to chop it up. There's 7 slides that I have to share with you, 7 questions asked. So we'll do 2, 2, 1, and 2 throughout tonight. And the reason that I put this poll out back in 2022, we refined it quite a bit for the winter 23-24 vPub. I think it was in January we did that session. We refined the questions a wee bit more to try and judge the temperature a bit better. And then we're now a year, just over a year down the line to see how things have changed. Now, when I did it in the last time with Andre Haberecht, when we shared it with everyone, there were 900 respondents, okay? It was out for a few days, 2 or 3 days. Whereas this poll, I only put out to the public yesterday, patrons, and then the public, just to try and get responses in for tonight. So it's about half. We're about 469, I think it was. In the end, I'll share with you in a second what the number was. But what I noticed, and what I've noticed about almost all the polls that I put out there, even if I did a poll with you tonight, you would see that once you've got a decent sample size, in our community, I would suggest somewhere between 50 and 100, the ratios, the percentage locks in. And it only drifts a tiny amount, 1 or 2 or 3% left or right of the whatever it locks in at 50 to 100. It seems to me that our community being the way that it is right now is, as long as you've got something 100, 200, a sample size of about that, you've got a good judge, a good way to view the larger community that enjoy what the content that goes out via the vPub. So to get 460 odds is pretty good going. And although it's only half as much as what we collected last year, that's just down to the amount of days that it was accumulating the data. I'm going to suggest to you that it's been pretty steady all of today, let's say that. By midnight last night, it was pretty locked in. And that was the exact same as when we did it just over a year ago. So let's share with you what we've got here. 469 responses, okay? So that's how many people I have responded to the poll that I put out yesterday. Just let me raise a wee glass of this beautiful Clynelish, and thank you very much, all of you, for taking the few minutes that it took you. But I know that to take a few minutes to do the poll, you have to think about it. You maybe have to, some of you might have even gone off to do a wee bottle count or something like that. Anyway, regardless, for whoever took the effort to return this poll, thank you all so much. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your trust. We're not here to judge anyone. All of your responses were anonymous. And it was up to you whether you told me who you were or not. So with that being the case, 469 respondents, the first couple of questions that I asked was to try and get a scale, a measure, a size, try and work out the size of the animal that we're dealing with. We were talking about collections and why you are collecting. So how many are there? How many are there? And how many are open? That was the first two questions that I asked. So let's see. This is us going back to the 900 and odd respondents from a year ago. And if I was to flick backwards and forwards between these colors, you'll see that what the ones I want you to look at here or focus on is the purple one here. That is the people with big collections, 16.4% with more than 200 bottles. And the blue one there, 9.4%, more than 400 bottles. If we click forward to 2025's questionnaire, that has grown. That's jumped up. We still have about 50% on the green and orange sections. So about half of our community have collections between 50 and 200 bottles. But amazingly, the people with only a handful or less than 50 bottles have shrunk a bit. And the people with collections of more than 200, more than 400 has grown. That's quite something to see. In summary then, on the first question where I asked people, how many bottles of whiskey do you have at home in your personal collection or selection? 468 respondents. The summary suggests that collections have actually grown. Now, let me say that they have grown despite the fact that when I took that poll a year ago, I think it was January last year, I should double check. I'm certain that Andrea and I got together in January, so just over a year ago. Everyone was adamant that their focus was going to be on stopping purchasing and they were going to consume what they had on hand and relax for a while. So that's not consistent with what your answers have actually been. What you're suggesting to now in 2025 is that the people who have actually done what I've done in the last year, absolutely true, is that I have continued to grow my collection. So that in itself is quite interesting. What about how many are open? Because it's not just about how many we have on hand, it's what we are doing with these bottles as well. How many are we actually consuming? How many are we enjoying ourselves? How many are we sharing? How many are we sampling out there? All of that kind of thing. So the other thing I asked is that, are you a drinker or hoarder? How many would you say are open? These are unchanged questions from last year. This is last year's 900 respondents. They were asked to answer somewhere about none or a few are open, less than half, around half, more than half, or most of them. So you can see there's quite a spread there. But look at more than half are red and orange there. More than half of our community are saying that a few or less than half is open. The people that are much more like me, that's more than half in that purple or blue in that blue section, are more than half or most of them are open. That's where I would categorize myself. They were at 10.9, 20%. So we're talking about, just over 30%. Let's look at how that's changed. That's grown a little bit. But the big shrink here are the people that have said a few or less than half. Can you see how that shrunk right down? Almost 30%, 50. So we're talking 54% of people, 53%, sorry, of people a year ago, but we're now down to 40%. So quite a big contraction there of people. That tells me that we're opening our bottles. We're drinking them. We've become less precious. We are opening our bottles. Is that what you would expect to find? If I think of things anecdotally from my own perspective, that's consistent exactly with me. I was accumulating and I was hoarding and I was keeping bottles sealed, not because I want to profit out of them, because I realized how difficult it might be to get them again because of the overheated market that we experienced late 2020, certainly 2021, and into 2022. Those 2 years, 2.5 years, taught us that some of our favourites were going to be very, very hard to come by. Some of the special limited editions were going to disappear and not even make retail shelves. So if we managed to get our hands on one of them, maybe a second one, we would maybe only open one and keep the other one for later. And if we only managed to get one, we might not open it at all, not right away. Not if the secondary value of it, let's say, far outstripped the value it was to us personally for something to open and drink. That was fascinating to me. So this suggests your answers as a community, 460 odd of you have responded to say, I'm opening more. More of my bottles are open. So if we look at things from a why are our collections there and how big are they, it's interesting that not only have they grown, but we're starting to relax a wee bit with it. And that is the dynamics that we've seen change in whiskey in the last year to year and a half, where this secondary market, overheated cask investment nonsense, overheated cask value, overheated value of whiskey, let's be honest, has been corrected. It's not fully swung back yet. That pendulum is still in a positive place, I think, but it's still got to swing back more. Whiskey has still got to come back to us. It's not quite there yet. Danny Hebbington is saying prices are dropping and Signatory are kicking it out of the park. Can't help myself with a good deal. Danny, don't ever feel guilty about the fact that that's happening as well. There's a lot of people, we all should remember that not everyone's going to be able to pull off a Signatory. Not everyone's going to be able to achieve what they can achieve with their stocks, the amount of years they've been in the industry, the prices that they originally paid for that stock. Smaller independent bottlers that are bringing much more individual experiences and a much more personal experience, they are not going to be able to do it at those prices. So don't feel shame about buying cheap Signatory products, and do not feel shame or do not feel like you've overpaid when you have to pay a few quid more to a much newer or smaller scale independent bottler that's not been around as long. Pay based on the flavour and the taste of the liquid and how much you're enjoying the experience of buying that bottle and owning that liquid. It's the cost of ownership. So sometimes on paper, a lot of things don't make sense, but we're not talking about analytical academic things on paper. We're talking about analytical, emotional things in a glass. It's very, very different. So yes, chase your bargains. And if you have to pay a wee bit more for the occasional thing that you love, don't give yourself a hard time. Just don't pay the contrived, artificially inflated prices from official releases where it's implied scarcity rather than actual scarcity that we tend to be able to enjoy from independent bottlers. Chris Pollack is saying maybe people who refuse to buy expensive releases are more into opening their bottles. I would suggest that those folk, the people who refuse to buy more expensive releases are more into opening their bottles. So yeah, the people that are kind of buying for consumption, there might be, certainly in our community, Chris, I think there's a lot of that there, absolutely. Ian Bruce is saying, my granda always said, pour that dram as you can take it with you. That's right. Yeah, there's a nice story. If we ever meet in real life, ask me the story about Highland hospitality and I'll share it with you. And Fernando is saying, compare the last 12 months, I almost duplicate the open bottles from 25 to 30 to more than 50. So there's another comment coming back that's bucking the trend that we saw a year ago where people were talking about, nope, I've had enough, I'm fed up. Tom Freeney, good to see you, Tom. Evening, Aquaviti. I'll hold my hand up and admit, I said I'd scale back the collection last year, but instead I grew it. However, it's now a lot more varied, with more indie and enthusiast bottles. Tom, fantastic to have you in, buddy. Whiskey with Molly saying my collection sits around the 100 mark. I can't keep whiskey. If I find a good bottle, I don't have the willpower to leave it. I'll reach for it and finish it. So you've found a way that works for you, Ben. You've found an equilibrium, let's say, and it's working for you. I have found an equilibrium for me, but it's not based on the size of the scale. It's a comfort that I've found inside myself. There have been times in the past that I've seen the collection grow and I've become anxious about how many were open, where the space is going to be, all of these kind of things. But now that I'm doing this kind of thing, and I've committed to doing this kind of thing, I love this kind of thing that I do on a Thursday night, it means that that overaccumulation is inevitable. And there will be ways for me to manage that in the future. So here's to our individual what's the plural for equilibrium? Equilibriums. Let's go with that. Cheers, Ben. I bought 2 bottles in the last 6 months, both in Scotland. Sadly, they're still there. Thankful that Peter Lee has them, though. So you're buying. See, that's a different kind of buying, isn't it? That really, really is. It's interesting, Jimmy, because you know that that's a good thing and you would like it. I don't know, I have been much more selective, says Chris, in the last year, not chasing as much, trying to keep my favourite perma shelf in place and only going after a few that pique my interest. You've been in it a wee while though, Chris. Certainly been around this channel since the beginning, and my pals filling deeper in Whisky Mystery. Good to have you guys. Hope you're keeping very, very well. How's life in Reno? And they're saying at our current drinking rate, we have 74 years supply. I love the way that you look at life, Phil. Fantastic. Jimmy's saying, I picked that one up from Jimmy. And Danny Edmonton is saying, 17-year-old cast strength Mortlach for 108 quid. Love Mortlach, so I couldn't pass that up. Do you know what? 17-year-old cast strength Mortlach, especially if it's a good one, hey, that's probably going to be a decent wee purchase. Okay, let's go on to the next confession that I have. I'm going to keep my wee Clynelish over there for a wee bit later. A wee sip. Might be hard for the drams of pour subsequently to beat that. That's a beautiful whiskey. And I'm going to share with you, some of you might have spotted what this is. I'll pop it here. There you go. See if you can guess what that is. This is the distillery that's at number 4 in my list. Now, I can't put this banner up straight away because I reveal it immediately. So I'll tease you a wee bit and let you guess. When I first did this kind of confessions of a whiskey botherer, and I might be wrong, don't quote me on this, but one of the times that I did do a bottle count, a collection count, this was actually the distillery that was number 1. So this at number 4 now has been surpassed by 3 other distilleries since in the last couple of years. But this was a surprise to me. I didn't think that I would have as much of this on the shelf that I do. Let's see what's happening. Okay, Rick Johnson is thinking Lagavulin. Jimmy Legg is saying Silly Laga. Peterhead Frank and Hellswood is saying Caol Ila. They're obviously looking at this bottle. They recognise the neck of the Diageo tall round, right? Lagavulin, Caol Ila. Sharmila Sousa is saying Lagavulin. Kyle Taylor saying Caol Ila. Roca is saying Lagavulin. Simon Jones is saying Caol Ila. Interestingly, Lagavulin would have once upon a time been up there, but I've not been buying a lot of Lagavulin in recent years, which won't surprise anyone. I think the 8-year-old still offers fantastic value. I think it's the pick of their core range. 16-year-old is not what it used to be. It was still a fan favourite when it was £60 and below, but now that it's north of that, it's the whiskey that's permanently on sale. Really not a good look. And the 12-year-old is just long gone out of the reach of most mortals. It's nonsensical pricing for it, honestly, but it's up to them. However, this remains a very, very popular Diageo distillery on my shelves. Let's hold it up as I announce to you my number 4 most hoarded distillery seems to be Caol Ila. I am surprised about that until I stop, pause, and think for a wee minute as to why, and I've probably talked about this in the past. Of course, I have. 14-2 split. That's 14 bottles on the shelf are open and 2 are sealed. What's going on there, Roy? Well, I can tell you that the 2 that are sealed, I've got an old, maybe 10 or 12-year-old, maybe not as, I think it's about a decade old, cast strength Gordon MacPhail Caol Ila. I don't know why it's still sealed. It's just been sitting there for a while, gathering a bit of dust. And I've got a 25-year-old official bottling of Caol Ila that I picked up for less than £100. I mean, it's depending on where you go to buy that now, you'll pay anywhere from 160 to 250. I've seen it as high as £500. It's obviously coming back down in price now again because Diageo had just lost the pricing plot. They gave up strategy a long time ago and just started throwing darts at a price dartboard, right? It's just crazy, and you can't fathom what's happened with a lot of Diageo's official pricing policies. It's very, very disconnected and disjointed. It seems like no two ends are talking to the other. So we just have to pick up what we can be bothered with and leave the rest. The reason I've got 14 bottles of Caol Ila on the shelf is not because of official bottlings. I have the 12-year-old, as I showed you there. I've got the 25-year-old, as I've just confessed. Got an open bottle of that 25-year-old as well, but I think that's where the official bottlings of Caol Ila these days run out. So the old days of having the special releases, the unpeated Caol Ilas, the distillery exclusive Caol Ilas, those kind of things, they're long gone. I just don't kind of seek them anymore. So much more to take our attention. But Caol Ila is one of these distilleries that's available from, excuse me, so many independent bottlers. And as we seek it, we find that it brings better value, more intensity, more flavor, more enjoyment, more engagement, and we tend to lean very, very quickly to independent bottlers for our fix of Caol Ila. I don't know for certain if the bottle I'm going to hold up to you right now is indeed Caol Ila, but I believe it is. And it certainly tastes like it is. But it is a single malt whiskey. It is from Islay. It's 17 years old, and it's much, much, much less expensive than official Caol Ila. Now, this 17-year-old as well is bottled at a very attractive 50.5% ABV and is fully natural too. This was a 2023 limited edition, and when this one came out, I loved it. Port Askeig from Elixir Distillers. Not all of the Port Askeigs that you pick up and buy are guaranteed to be Caol Ila, but they will all be single malt Islay whiskies. Occasionally they might be a Laphroaig, occasionally they might be a Bunnahabhain, occasionally they might be something else. But the core range, I suspect, tends to be more or less Caol Ila these days. The 17-year-old. So I have 14 bottles open and 2 bottles sealed. So 16, that's only 1 bottle more than the bottle count of Clynelish. Things start to get ahead of themselves. We get carried away in the next 3 placings. Cheers, everyone. Should have been concentrating on the nose there, but as I took a wee sip, I got a nice lemony blast of ashy, peaty smoke. On the palate, the smoke is quite quiet. It's attenuated. You might sip this and immediately suspect you're sipping an Islay whiskey, no doubt, but I think it would betray the age is betrayed not only by the quality of the spirit and the engagement, but the quietness of the smoke. The smoke is really quite nice and mellow. This bottle has been open quite a while as well, which will help that effect. Lovely, silky, long finish. Silky is a good word for this. Lots of lemon. Lots of outdoors, coastal, smoky Islay peat. It's even, you would even go as far to say, for being a big smoky whiskey, at 50.5%, you might go as far to suggest that there's elegance to this. It's quite measured. A little bit of spritz to it, a little bit of a floral element. Slightly perfumed. Lemon scent. Lemon pledge, that type of... I'm not tasting furniture polish from this, but that kind of, atomized floral fruit is definitely a lemony fruit. Green apple. I don't think this is still available, but I think it was only about 100, 120 pounds or something like that when it came out. It was pretty good. Keith McKenzie's saying the 12-year-old Caol Ila is what's in my glass tonight. Trying to finish off one of those bottles that I originally opened 6 or 7 years ago. Keith, I hope it's still strong and going down well for you, and I hope you're enjoying it. Nice wee coincidence for us both to have a wee Caol Ila in the glass. Jan Mika is saying a great Caol Ila is the 11-year-old parcel number 11, single malts of Scotland range from Elixir Distillers, 48% natural colour, non-chill filtered. So those parcel series with the beige label literally looks like a kind of parcel lab label on there. Always good value, always 48% ABV, ones to look out for. Terrific stuff. Reb Mordecai saying you recommended this Portiskeag 17-year-old to me. Superb Caol Ila, compares very well with the official bottling 18-year-old. Reb, that means a lot that I've made a recommendation to somebody whose opinion I respect, by the way, and you've come back to say that you've found good value in it. That means a lot to me. And I have to say, it's one of the benefits, surely, of being fully independent. If I recommend something, it's genuinely because I have found love in the bottle. Danny Headington is saying, I have a 45.8% 12-year-old Askeag. No idea if it's Caol Ila. It's damn good, though. I would suggest, I think I know the one that you're talking about, and I think pretty certain that that one is a Caol Ila as well. Doodle the Drama Arnie saying, one thing I noticed about my shelf is that the minority are official bottlings in the core range, probably a symptom of mainly buying following barfly consultation. For Ben Nevis, 0 official bottles, for instance. Well, it's a bad example, Ben Nevis, because I would suggest that the 10-year-old Ben Nevis is typically a nice wee bottle to pick up if you can. The Clynelish is a try before you buy, definitely. Some of the others, the Glencoe is quite divisive. It's an 8-year-old blended malt as well. Some other releases from Ben Nevis from the official channel are try before you buy, but they're so few and far between that that's another reason that you've not had your hands on them. But I would also say that you're spot on. Barfly consultation, you're going to lean or be more confident about going towards an independent bottling. But for the majority of the people out there in the world, that's probably going to come much later in their whiskey journey. And also for a lot of people out there, Arnie, you're in Glasgow, Scotland, despite being a German, but if you were in Germany, you would have great selection as well, or anywhere else in continental Europe, honestly. So you've got a really good selection here of official and independent bottles. Most people tend to go through the officials first. The problem that the industry has right now is that too many of us are getting stuck on chasing independent bottles. Why? Because they offer so much more engagement and grip and take so much more of our attention than the official bottles do. The official bottles, and pandering to the mass market, are often in danger of becoming really quite insipid and bland or homogenized. Brian Storm is saying, had a rye chuckle aquavite at Diageo, complaining about potential Trump tariffs hitting their profits when they've definitely contributed to that themselves with ridiculous pricing. Diageo are going to Diageo. As much as I love them, love the distilleries, amazing. But this poor Askeag is still on the Whisky Exchange for 122 quid aquavite. I think that's what I paid for it, Ben. I don't think that's changed at all. 122. Oh, I mean, it's hard. I've recommended it to Reb at that price. He's gone for it and he loves it. What I would say is that I'm not suggesting anyone run out and spend £122 on a bottle, but if you're after a mature Islay malt, 50.5% ABV, you'd be hard pushed to find better value than that. There are signatory bottles coming out from Caol Ila, especially the 100 proof series, 57.1%. You're going to get those half that price, maybe not 17 years old, but if they did bring out a Caol Ila, I'm not sure if they've brought a Caol Ila out in the kind of 100 proof series with the black labels, the slightly higher end things, still be a bit cheaper. But I would say that generally speaking, that's been very, very good value to me when I discovered that. Keith McKenzie is saying it's still holding up this end better than I remembered. He's enjoying his Caol Ila too. I think a few more questions are, says Everwind, is whiskey your only collection, or do you have other competing collections for disposable income? And of course, the degree of spouse support threat. I know it's easy for us to get dragged off into the weeds and figure out how people need to keep their, the fuel in their classic car, or the latest fishing rods and boats and goodness knows what else, golf gear, whatever it is that we're doing. Yeah, there's plenty of bland single malt, says Jimmy Legg. but we know how to avoid it, Aquavitae. We get quite good at avoiding the bland stuff, don't we? It's rare for us to get caught out these days. Rick Johnson said a really special Caol Ila last weekend, finishing Palo Cortado, independent bottle released by Isla Whisky Vaults. Absolutely delicious. It was Arthur Motley that once said in a tasting I did years ago, he stood up and he talked about Caol Ila and he said, thank God for Caol Ila, because for the longest time on Isla, it did all the heavy lifting. This is before Kilkerran was at any kind of scale at all, before Bunnahabhain was making what they do, before Ardnamurchan existed, before all the distilleries were operational as healthy as they are, that Caol Ila was always doing the heavy lifting and meant that we could always get our Isla fix regardless of what was happening elsewhere. Graham Fraser is in. Good to see you, buddy. Saying Aquavitae, it would have been interesting to ask barflies how many different distilleries they have in their collection. I suspect many barflies concentrate on 10 to 20 of the same distilleries. Could be true, Graham. And I have to say, it is a good question to ask, but we also have to remember the investment that would be involved in that. If you've got 20 bottles on the shelf, I think it's quite an easy thing to do. But if you've got a collection that's up at the numbers that's been betrayed by the first questions that we asked, much harder. All right, let's jump in and go to the next section. The next section, why? Why do you have the bottles? And now that you have them, how do you feel about them? That was the next two questions, or the reason behind them at least. So let's bring this back in as ask you the next two. Last year I asked you, what are your bottles for? I mean, the big blue section here is the thing that betrays who we are as a community. All are for opening and drinking. Now, you might want to attenuate that a little bit and suggest that maybe people are going to say that even though they don't really mean it. But I actually believe this about our community. And look at the red section there as well. Most are for opening and drinking. So when you talk about the purple section, all are for trading or selling. Most are for drinking, a few are for what, these kind of things. And you start to get down into the weeds, because in this white section here that's missing, that's made up of a multitude of different open answers. Generally speaking, a year ago, everyone was saying they're all for opening and drinking, and I'm not really buying them for secondary. That yellow section there that you see, and it's important that I explain to you what that is. The yellow section on that particular question, specifically, it says it's a mix of bottles for drinking and bottles for trading. So there are some people in that yellow section that you see there that were, let's say, honest enough to say that, you know, some of, and I'm not suggesting that anyone was dishonest, but there are people that think in that way. You know, I've bought this bottle, if I drink it, fine, but if I keep it sealed, I can maybe liquidate it into cash or swap it for something else a wee bit later. Let's see what happened when I did the poll this week. This is almost identical, right? What I'd say is that we've got 1 or 2% either way, but I would say that's well within the tolerances, and things have not changed. None of our community, none of people are interested in keeping bottles and polishing them and keeping them sealed and working out how much they're worth. They are not going to be interested in joining the vPub. They're not going to be consuming whiskey content at the places where I ask people to fill in a poll. All of us are here for what whiskey does to us as mortals. A little bit of that is, yes, swapping, yes, trading, yes, selling. There's no shame in that. But it's not our intent. It's not our first foot. It's not our step. It's not what we want to do. We want to enjoy whiskey for a flavour prospect. The second question I asked is how people were feeling about those collections. Sorry, to summarise that, again, a wee bit the same as the previous thing. We've become a wee bit less precious, but there is a kind of tiny change. The other one I asked about what are their feelings about this collection. Now that they've got all of these bottles on the shelf, how are they feeling about it? So back in a year ago, you can see that the huge red section there is saying, I have a lot, but I am okay with it. I have a lot, but it will likely grow, as the orange section. The blue section, the dark blue section that you see there, 16% of people last year said, I have too many. And 11% of people were quite maverick and said, look, I don't really plan it. Let's look at how it was answered more recently. Again, not a lot of change, but what we can see is a big swell to that red section. I have a lot, but I'm okay with it. And a slight swell, a slight shrinking to I have a lot, but it'll likely grow. So I think what we're seeing here is a wee bit more, people being a wee bit more relaxed, a bit of pragmatism playing here. And in summary, a slight trend towards relaxing about how much we have on hand. We have forgiven ourselves for the fact that to enjoy whiskey, to compare whiskey, to chase flavour and to do all the things that we love, we're at the stage where we're okay with having whiskey on hand. I'll share an anecdote with you. My good pal, the Whiskey Rev, who I've not spoken to in a wee while. If you're out there, big guy, if you're listening, I still think about you. I hope you're doing well. But we do get together. I don't think a year's ever gone by without us getting together. But there was a conversation around the table one night, and his wife had started to notice that his whiskey accumulation had started to become a thing. They didn't have a space to store it, so it was probably quite obvious to the family. And she inquired and asked why anyone would need so many different bottles of whiskey. I had more bottles of whiskey than the Rev did back then, and I tried to explain it away by suggesting, how many shoes does a person need? How many pairs of shoes might she have? And are the shoes interchangeable, as she was suggesting the whiskey would be? One bottle is every bit as good as another bottle of whiskey in her mind. She's fantastic, but I could never see her. I knew that it wasn't the type of person I could easily evangelize whiskey towards. But when we started to talk about shoes, she accepted immediately and kind of understood the concept a wee bit. That said, if we were sitting here today and talking about several hundred pairs of shoes, I think I would start to struggle to justify it. So there we are. Before I go into confessing my number 3 whiskey and talking about the habits, what we have been buying, we can summarize by suggesting that I think it's only small. There isn't a huge swing here. It's not black to white, but there is a I'm going to use the word again. There's a pragmatism. There's a relaxed state. We're starting to become okay with the fact that we are whiskey botherers, that we end up having a lot of whiskey on hand. And that gives us the luxury of being fickle and promiscuous even more. We can decide when we want to buy, and if it doesn't suit us because of the selection or the price, we can decide not to buy. My buddy Rolf from Norway is in. So good to see you, buddy. And he's talking to Connell McKenzie, which suggests that Connell is also in as well. Fantastic to have you both. Whiskey finds good folk, doesn't it? Okay. My next confession, I've just shared with you. Clynelish was number 5. Caol Ila was number 4. Position number 3. You're going to be able to guess this. What if I was to tell you that it was from Campbelltown? What would you guess? My number 3 whiskey is a Campbelltown whiskey. That is my number 3 in terms of the quantity that I have accumulated. And things start to ramp up a wee bit here. We're at 15 or 16 bottles. There's quite a few collections on there that were at kind of a substantial number, but didn't really breach the double figures. Maybe some got to 12 or 13, that kind of thing. I'm looking up here at Lagavulin, and I'm looking at some Knockdhu Anox, Ben Romax, Craigellach's. There are a few brands on the shelf. But this one, number 3, and I can tell you in total, the bottles that I have on hand, number currently 23. And that's a split of 13 open and 10 sealed still. It's quite a lot of sealed. Where is it from? Aye, not any of you have managed to guess it wrong that I can see. Or maybe one or two have got it wrong or guessed. Maybe you would have thought that this might have been higher up. But I can tell you that number 3 Position number 3 is Kilkerran. That makes a lot of sense to a lot of you, surely. You know, I've got Kilkerran's been my whiskey of the year, I think, at least once. It's been my producer of the year at least once. I think twice my producer of the year. Certainly been my whiskey of the year when I talked about the 16-year-old. My love of Glengyle Distillery is just, I adore it. I adore that we live in times that we can witness the birth or the renaissance, the rebirth, if you like, of a distillery like Glengyle. The Work in Progress series kicked it off, of course, but I'll never forget the time that I enjoyed a 12-year-old to launch this channel. The whiskey that gave me the courage to press go live on the first ever video was a Kilkerran 12. And it's not that's connected me with it, it's the quality of the spirit. It's the personality behind it. It's the fact it's Campbelltown. It's the fact that it's unique, it's different, it's wonderful. Not everyone needs to love it. I don't talk about the whiskies, I think, from a proportionate perspective. Let's say the amount of dedicated minutes of airtime I give to these distilleries are probably less than what the shelves suggest should be the case. The shelves betray my true favourites. The reason I don't talk about Kilkerran as much as potentially I should is because I am very aware of how tricky it is for some of you to get hold of it. And I think I do need to be mindful of that, but it doesn't need to dictate the content, because there will be a time that you do have the ability to pick up a bottle of Kilkerran, and I would suspect you will be hard pushed to go wrong with it. The liquid I have the least of is the peated stuff, but I've noted the heavily peated Kilkerran in recent years has become fantastic. I'm going to pour a wee special Kilkerran, and I'll tell you what that is in a second here. It's a 35cl bottle, and I have included 20cl, 35cl, 50cl, smaller than 70cl bottles in my bottle count for this whole project. What have we been missing here? Oh my goodness, maybe quite a wee bit. Mika is celebrating being a member for 24 months. He's declaring he's got 274 closed, 88 open. Slancha, that's quite an impressive collection, Mika, and it's quite a disciplined one as well, managing to keep that many sealed. My pal George from Arizona bought me a dram to say, "Evening Barflies from Arizona on my 75th birthday." Oh my God, how could I have missed that? I don't know I hope you're still in, George. Can we all do George? I mean, he's 75 years old today, and you're hanging out with us in the vPub. I hope you still are, George. I'm so sorry I missed this. I don't know when you dropped that in, buddy. But George L. from Arizona, one of the Arizona crowd, so many of you over there, celebrating 75 years young today. George, from all of us, many happy returns. Cheers. And what a dram. What a whiskey to toast you on your birthday, buddy. And he's gifted 5 Aquavitae memberships as well. Such generosity. Thank you, George. Andy Mankin, it looks like a Mancan, bought me a dram from America saying, "Sometimes worried about my collection, then compare it to Matt Z Whiskey Crusader, and I buy more." It's become a hobby with my wife, and our collection grows. Matt Zitrick is a legend, and his collection is legendary, and his attitude towards it and his sharing of it, Andy, is legendary too. I'm going to raise a dram to you, Andy, and say thanks for your dram, but I would like you to pass along to me, my friend Matt Zitrick, and tell him I think about him often and I'm asking for him. Here's to him, Andy's collection. Cheers, Andy. And a dram in as well from Ted Brooks saying, "For me, 90% of my bottles are open. My favourite time is to hand a dram to a good friend." That's what I'm finding, Ted, and here's to that. So much about whiskey is the people that you're privileged to share it with. Look, see if you're sitting there at a wee armchair, or your feet up, socks and crocs style, slipper style, just socks, whatever, bare feet, doesn't matter, feet up somewhere on your own. If you're sitting in an armchair, if you're sitting just fantastic, raise a glass with us. And if you're fortunate to have pals to share it with, and you're fortunate that you've got pals that will share it back with you, then we raise a glass to that too. Whiskey is not bad. Cheers, Ted. Thank you. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Ted. And many happy returns, George. Jeff Whiskey is saying, been impassioned to recount and think it's at 94 bottles with about 75% open. Now, that's interesting because Jeff is a creator, whiskey creator. Fantastic channel on YouTube. Love his content. So you can see that it's going to be a challenge for Jeff to ever get that 75% lower, because he's going to be encouraged to open a lot of bottles, despite what he's passionate and loves and things. A lot of his collection is going to be built around the content that he's creating. Keith McKenzie says he's just throwing it out there, Roy, before the rush, but guessing your number one will be Royal Brackla. Now Roddy admitted you to the Appreciation Society. I don't think I'll ever be admitted to the Royal Brackla Appreciation Society. I think the night that opened was the night the membership was closed. George is saying, if my purchases rate equaled my wife's shoe purchases, I would have died of thirst. Oh, well, that's interesting. So she's very, very careful in her shoe purchases, right? Or maybe he's talking about allocation of funds. Not sure. Anyway, there we go. I want to explain my Kilkerran split here as well. 13 open, 10 sealed. Why have I got so many bottles of Kilkerran sealed? In my defense, a lot of them are these wee precious bottles from the Campbelltown Festival. 35 CL bottles. These are great wee things to gift, great wee things to take along to a night. Guaranteed that it's very unlikely a lot of people are going to have had these. To share a bottle, really quite privileged liquid. Quite a few of them are those. And quite a few of them are backup bottles I've purchased because I know I might not be able to get another 16. My Whiskey of the Year, remember. Might not be able to pick up a 12 when I'm in the mood for a 12. Now, Kilkerran 12 was a permashelf bottle just last week. So when I find it, and I know that I've got this much left, or if I know even if I've got an open bottle in any condition at home, there's a Kilkerran 12 on the shelf. If I've got the 50 quid in my pocket to pick it up, I'm picking it up. I end up accumulating the whiskey. It always gets opened. It always gets enjoyed. I don't think I've got any Kilkerran on the shelf that I have no intention of ever opening. It's just not a thing in my collection generally. And I've ended up with 23 bottles of Kilkerran. Permission to share a wee bit more. If you'd have asked me a year ago, maybe summertime last year, that would have been more, because I've got quite a few empty bottles of Kilkerran. 16, 12, festival editions, 15-year-old bourbon cask, 8-year-old sherry cask. Kilkerran, I don't care what cask it comes out of. I absolutely love this stuff. Great things to gift. I must have forgotten mine at your place. Wow. Okay, Jimmy, I'll try and up my game a wee bit, buddy. Sam is saying the 19-year-old is pretty bloody special. This is not the 19-year-old, but it's close. This was part of the warehouse tasting for the festival last year. It was an April 2006 distillate, bottled in May 2024, so 18 years and 1 month from Aquavite Street, and that street is called Refill Bourbon. It's 59.3%, and it's just the story behind Kilkerran existing in itself is a good excuse for a vPub in the future. If any of the team down there at J&A Mitchell are interested in coming forward, stepping forward, and telling the true tales and the true stories, maybe I need to reach out to someone like a Frank McCarty or something like that. I don't know Frank. I've never met Frank. I know he's a legend. But yeah, the reasons that Kilkerran exists, I want to celebrate the fact that it's there. I think it's wonderful that it exists. All right. Whiskey Ray there is in. Roland, good to see you. Sounds like recycled review time with some Kilkerrans featuring. I always get bullied. And I knew that with the topic I was speaking about tonight, I knew that that would be an inevitability. It's a wee bit cold outside. I know it's just a bit putting on a jacket and things. It's hard to film in the cold, and excuses, Roland. Noted. George is saying, I think Roy confused you with me. Thanks for the membership, mate. Oh, George L. George P. Oh, but that's not fair, is it? George L., you're celebrating. No, did I? George L., George P., did I make a mistake? Did I confuse it? No, it's George L. is celebrating 75 years in Arizona, as long as I got that part right. And Dan is saying, high time for a recycled review. Those are great, and it's been ages. Last summer, yes. Sharmella Suze is in. Good to see you, Sharmella. He's saying, I have a 2006 Kilkerran, which I picked up last summer, saving it for a special occasion, as is your right. I hope you do find that occasion soon. And Sam is saying, I have the April 2005 bottle 2024 version in refill bourbon. What a whiskey. Glad you're loving it. It genuinely is what a whiskey. Wrap up warm and get out there by the bench. Big Jessie, I'm getting bullied now by Helen, which is fine. She's been around long enough. She has the right to bully. Okay, let's move on. So I've shared with you Kilkerran. So, of course, I need to tell you what the poll was. What was the habits thing? What are you saying here? When I talk about habits, I'm specifically asking what has, in terms of the previous 6 to 12 months, what's happened to your purchasing in the last 6 to 12 months? What's happening with your habits, your purchasing habits? When I asked this a year ago, you can see that people saying that it's stopped or it's slowed a lot or slowed a little. That's the red and orange and that kind of dark blue section there. So by far, about 60% of you in total suggested that it had slowed a little, and 21% said it was about the same. So people that's saying it's grown is the purple and pale blue there. It's increased a little or a lot. So we're talking about maybe 20% admitting to the fact that they had purchased more. Let's flip forward to this year now, and we can see that according to you guys, and last year, 30 rises. Whoops, I've gone a wee bit too far. 30 rises to 33. 29 stays about the same. 21% saying it's about the same is almost maybe 1 or 2% more. So in summary, the feeling of all of us, we feel like, and we are answering, that we have slowed down. It is our belief that we are buying less in 2025 than we did a year ago. I'm not going to suggest that I, you, any of us are delusional. Based on the answers that you gave us to the first 4 questions, the question I've just shared with you, question 5, and that poll, you believed that you were buying about the same or more. In fact, or less. More of you thought that you were buying less than when I asked you this a year ago. And that was the questionnaire a year ago, when you were absolutely adamant that you were not buying any whiskey, and you were certainly not planning to buy any whiskey. The next 2 questions, the last 2 questions that I'll share with you in a wee bit, asks you directly about what your perspectives are and your predictions are for the future, what you intend to buy going forward. But I find that amazing. I think it's interesting to reach out to the community, to bring us all together and to say, what are we all feeling? What are we all doing? And I think there is a wee bit of an ostrich in the sand going on sometimes. Oh, no, I'm buying less. And then we have the Alistair McPhails and the Arneys and the Doodle the Drams coming on and saying, Danny Hebbington, I'm buying loads. It's ridiculous. As long as we're aware of what we're doing, as long as we're keeping tabs on what we're doing, as long as it's within our means, within our capacities, as long as we're not letting the thing control ourselves, that we're in danger of hiding from it a wee bit, right? I think we need to be honest, especially if we're going to use it as reasonable, valuable metrics to feed back to the kind of wider whiskyverse, the industry, or whoever cares. What's the feeling out there? What is the vibe? Because the first few questions betray the fact that we're a wee bit more relaxed. And that one suggests that, no, I'm going to buy less. I'm buying less. These are anecdotal. There's nothing, these sample rates, you know, the 400 odd of our community versus 900 odd from last year. It's not absolutely, it's hardly scientific data, but it's interesting nonetheless. Sean Causer is here. Good to see you, Sean. He's saying, no slowdown here. My wife's finally given in and caught the whiskey bug. You've nailed it. If you can do that with your partner, if you can enjoy whiskey with your significant other, like so many people out there are successful doing, I've never managed to do that. So I can call myself an evangelist as much as I want, but I've never converted my wife fully. I have enjoyed a dram with my wife. She has lay on a blanket at the beach at Machier Bay and enjoyed a Caol Ila Loch Gorm and actually declared it quite enjoyable. But that's about the closest I've got. Sam, sorry, it wasn't Sam. That was Sean. You've knocked it off. Well done. George is saying, as Aquavitae is aspiring to slow down the same as actually slowing down. Aspiring to slow down and slowing down. Oh, that's right. The road to doom is paved with good intention. That's right. But we also have, we can't conflate real dangerous things with things that are actually positive for us. And I have to be careful there. If we are, if we found a way for whiskey to enhance our life, to remind us what it is to be mortal and alive and enjoy being alive, if we found whiskey to be something we can enjoy in a measured, responsible way for flavor and contemplation and all of the good things, then that needs to feed into the balance of it. So it's not just about good intention, it's just about good, sensible living. Did I get away with that, George? I'm not sure. And Sam is saying, trying to buy less so I can go mental when I visit the promised land over the summer. A visit to Dornoch is due this summer. Absolutely. Save some money until you visit Dornoch, no doubt. George P. has gifted 5 Aquavitae memberships. And Bobby has joined the Aquavitae Barflies as well. Welcome, Bobby. Thank you for your support. Thank you for keeping the vPub ad-free. Enjoy your emoji and enjoy being part of the Barflies. Thank you. Graham Fraser is celebrating being a member for 58 months. My pal Graham is saying, I think I'm buying less, but better, older bottles. We could all learn a thing or two from Graham Fraser. There's no doubt about that. I never buy for the first 3 months of the year. Longer if possible, says Brian Stormont, but it might go longer this year. Wow. Greg's Whiskey in Paris. It's true, Roy. I promise I'm buying less Macallan, Dalmore, Kurosawa, Hanyu, etc. You know what you're buying, and if you hang out here, you'll know to avoid the stuff like that, right? Doodle the Drama is saying it may be slightly slowing down, but that's just because I learned a bit. The least rewarding buys I made from FOMO, the best from research and recommendations, so I won't go by FOMO again. But you've kind of got to learn your lessons a wee bit, right? You can't do everything vicariously, Arnie. You have to kind of experience what that is. Julian Rickman is saying, doesn't this show we just can't resist the temptations of a great dram? Our resistance is always compromised despite best intentions. I'll say yes, there's absolutely buckets of truth in that, Julian. Absolutely well said. Danny Hebington is saying, I start fast in the quiet months, then when the weather comes and work gets busier, so I tend to slow down just as it jumped. That was the end of your comment, Danny. Yeah, we always tend to find ways of, and it's quite seasonal as well. Even if we don't slow down, we certainly change our habits and the things that we're enjoying. Okay, I'm going to share with you then what my most hoarded number 2 is. So the amount of bottles that I have on the shelf from this particular distillery, I'll tell you what it counts. I have 22 bottles from this distillery open. And then I have a further 11 bottles from this distillery sealed. From one distillery, I have 33 bottles in the vPub here. And I know that a lot of you are thinking, that's just nuts, that's crazy. That doesn't make sense. It's not even justifiable based on the content that Roy creates. How can he justify 33 bottles from one distillery? And I'll put it to you, none of this is rational. This whiskey thing is not rational as a concept, as a pursuit. It is visceral. It's emotion, it's flavor, it's experience, it's discovery, it's living, it's being alive. I've still got 2 empty glasses clean here, and I've put drams in the 4 other glasses. There's 2 there, and there's 2 there. There's still plenty of liquid left in here, and if I drink this before I go off to bed tonight, I drink it, and if I don't, and it ends up in the spittoon and I've poured a bit too much, and sorry, you keep it, sipping it to the point that you're enjoying it, and you stop there. Every bottle that I've bought from the distillery in position number 2, I've enjoyed buying. To the point they've just released a new one this week, and as soon as that's available to me, I'll buy that too. And I'll have 34 bottles from this distillery. See if you can guess what it is. A generous dram came in from my pal Aaron Rao. Good to see Aaron. He's saying, and we welcomed Aaron in Glasgow last year, didn't we, buddy? He's saying, looking forward to seeing many of you on March 15th. So you're coming back again. Let's raise a wee glass to that. And I look forward to welcoming you back. And that'll be for the Independent Spirits Festival. I hope you've got a ticket, Aaron. Please, if you've not got a ticket, get your hands on a ticket now. independentspirits.co.uk, I think it is. I should know. I built the website. Grab your ticket now. Make sure you've got a ticket. There's not many left. Cheers, Aaron. If you're just going for the festival, you've got more time. But if you're going for the film and the festival, make sure you've got that correct ticket. And there's only a few left. Oh, that Kilkerran is absolutely delicious. A bit of kind of almondy note, a wee marzipan-y note there. So, what are you guessing? Guessing Loch Lomond, says Frank Peathead. Good to see you, Frank. More than double that Craig Allachie methinks in the Nook. Okay, you're admitting your favourite, Helen. Loch Lomond, maybe. Ardnamurchan, says Stefan Novak. Drew from Arizona is saying Ardna. Is that Ardna or Ardnamurchan? Of course you mean Ardnamurchan. Drew, Alistair McPhail is saying Ardnamurchan. Come on, Dalmore, says Jeff Whiskey. Keith McDonald saying, just bought an Adelphi Benrinnes and a refill Hoggy and Dalun 19 and Firstwell PX, despite my slowdown. Yeah. Slow down. And Keith McDonald is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 23 months and he's saying, cheers to more Ardna Madeira on the horizon. Busted. Busted. Right enough. Spot on, Keith. Well done. I can tell you all that you're everybody that guessed Ardna. Oh, look at the one I've picked as well. I've got a core range here. As I say, I've picked a core range for all of the bottles tonight, I'm confessing. But the one that sits at position number 2 of my most hoarded is Ardnamurchan. 22 bottles open and there are no duplicates open. That's from one distillery, okay, over the years. And it's been a long time. If you picked up the code on that, I believe I think that's their inaugural. September 2020, batch 01 of that year. So this is their inaugural liquid. So I'm wondering whether to pour that or the Indy. Maybe I should pour that. The Indy I was going to pour is from my pal Sevi. He shared this with us at the Glasgow event last year. So bottling from North Star. This is an Ardnamurchan 6-year-old from the Obscurities and Curiosities range. This came out at decent ABV as well, 55.4%. Let's go right back to the start when I first realised that I'd love Ardnamurchan. I wonder how long this has been open. It's not been open since 2020. I suspect this has been one that I've managed to pick up much more recently. A wee whisper of peat. But that pebble, rock, slate, oyster, seashell, rock pool, coastal, outdoor. Fantastic. Fantastic. Where does it come from? Crazy soft. I think that bottle has been open for quite a wee while. Potentially 4 years. A nice wee bit of pepper on the finish, not completely soft. I think it's softened in the open bottle. It's hard to try and find fruit and other aspects of this because of just how mineralic it is. I'll never forget how mineralic and how kind of limestone and slate and pebble and oyster shell and all of that kind of mineralic coastal element, how forward that was. It's very forward on this one. There are some fruits, wee bit of light citrus. Bit of orchard fruit as well. The peat is, I don't remember this being peaty. I think what I've been very, very focused on trying to do over the course of winter is avoid peaty whiskies. If it's a conscious decision, just choosing not to. And I think it's helped me detect a wee bit of peat in whiskey a bit more. I was out on Saturday with a couple of folk, and we ended up at the Bon Accord. And we had 3 drams. One was very peaty, and it was very obvious it was peaty to me. But one of the guys I was sitting with immediately was like, "Wow, there's peat in this," and it was really reassuring to me to be sitting with somebody who loves whiskey, who's into whiskey, whose life is whiskey, and they also suffered from that peat blight. It's also reassuring to me that it's kind of alleviated a wee bit for me, and it's kind of come back. Now, if I dive in and I start drinking lots of peaty whiskies again, will it come back? I'm not sure. I can tell you tonight, then, this Ardnamurchan, I'm picking up quite a bit of peat in this inaugural. Remember, they released their inaugural at 45 quid. Plenty of it as well. Amazing. Why have I got 22 open and 11 sealed? Well, in my defense, I've got 22 open because of the sheer variety that's come out from them. I've got cask strength, multiple varieties. Core range, multiple varieties. I've got the Sauterne, I've got the sherry cask, I've got the Midgie, I've got the Madeira cask, I've got single casks. And the majority of what I have open and sealed is, of course, the Aquavitae bottling. I had to grab a couple extra Aquavitae bottlings to squirrel away for things in the future. What a privilege it was to do that bottling back in 2023, right? A refill cask versus a refill cask with the specs absolutely identical and the experience in the bottle and the glass completely different. Jimmy Legacy and lol, peat blindness is a rare trauma. Yeah, I don't think it is. It just depends on how much you're enjoying, Jimmy. If you're sipping like you do, I would suspect that I understand it would be unlikely for you to suffer from it. It's a wee bit different from me. I tend to drown myself in peaty whiskies, and I can easily taste past the peat. Ginger Genius is saying, currently sipping the Good Spirits Ardna, my whiskey of the year for 2024. A fantastic dram. PX, I think as well, that one as well, John. Fantastic liquid. I have Ardna apathy. I hope it changes. I can help you. When are you next coming over, Jimmy? Tom is saying, I have 13 bottles of Ardna on hand, more than twice any other brand. Hoping for a smooth on the forehead from Jenny. A smooch on the forehead, sorry, smooth. A smooch on the forehead from Jenny. But we'll settle from one from Connell. I don't know if there's much smooches in the offing, but they'll certainly be very, very grateful. And Greg in Paris is saying, the closest to it for me, to that inaugural Ardnamurchan, was reduced Indy Port Ellen and Talisker Aquavitae whiskey on the West Coast. Then the Hera came in. I'm not sure what you're referencing to. You're talking about the mineralic side of things. Not sure. But there we go. Position number 2, which means that you need to start guessing what my most hoarded whiskey is going to be on the collection shelves right now. Okay, let's go back into the last 2 things from this poll that we put out there. Let's get this shared with you. As we move into this section of it, what we're going to ask is we're going to switch the perspective to the current status and the past towards the future. And we're going to ask what's going to happen to your purchasing going forward, and what are your feelings about the things that are available to take your interest today. How are you feeling about it? So back in the day, I asked the question, predictions relative to the past. I don't know, I think we need to go forward a wee bit from that, don't we? I think this is what I've been sharing. There you go. The summary is a slight softening towards the reality of probably still buying a few, some pragmatism creeping in, but outlook looking forward. No, I think it was right. I'm confusing myself. I went through these before I went live tonight, and now I'm going through them again and thinking I've just done it. Apologies. So also relative to the last 6 to 12 months, what will happen to your purchasing? I think I just went through all of this, didn't I? Let me make sure by going to the actual thing itself. Done that. Okay. Okay. No, I think yeah. I feel like I've just shared this with you. Anyway, let's just summarize it like I haven't. And if I'm repeating myself, put it down to a moment. It's fine. If we look at the year ahead, I did summarize this, didn't I? I did. So the only thing we've got to finish on then is, what do we think about the choice of whiskies that's available for everyone to purchase right now? So this is asking the question about, and there's been topics on the list for the vPub going forward where I wanted to talk about how there is just an absolutely dizzying amount of choice available to us today, even from single distilleries, from single ranges, from single brands. It is difficult to keep up. And a lot of that's to do with the fact that it might be single cask or very, very small outturns, but often it's core range that has just got out of hand. So I asked you all, what are your feelings about the choice of whiskey that's available to everybody today? Do you need more? Is it okay? Or is there far too much? So if we go back to a year ago, there were 900 respondents here. In the blue section there, 28.6% felt there was far too much. 46.8% felt there was a lot, but it's still healthy. That's almost half. And then orange were people saying there's enough. Green, that tiny sliver, is the only one that's left there that you can see people that's saying that's not enough. So people that's saying there's a lot, but it's healthy, or there's far too much, is 3/4. If we look at it the other way, people that are saying there's a lot, but it's healthy, but there's enough, is also almost 3/4. If we go forward to today's or this week's poll, that is kind of almost identical. The people that have said that there's enough has shrunk. The people that is saying there's a lot, but it's healthy, has increased. Just keep going backwards and forwards so that you can see. The people that are saying that it's too much has decreased. Our outlook has changed a little bit. Or let's say it hasn't changed, but it is in the process of changing. And in summary, there's a slight lean towards acceptance of the current variety. I put it to you that despite what that wee poll shows at the end there, the incremental changes has been the same as kind of we started with the poll. People are becoming a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more laid back, perhaps even, might I suggest, a wee bit more open to starting to explore and spend money again and things. I think that despite that, we have lost our focus on core ranges. We've lost our focus on easy to understand variety. We've lost our focus on quality, and we've focused far too much on quantity. There's nothing like a new release to get some excitement. Here's another new release. Here's another new release. Here's another new release. Same stuff from a different cask. Same stuff, but a different vatting, a different batch number, a different ABV, a different strength. A cask strength version is fine. I think it's okay. But if you're going to commit to a new product and keep it as a thing going forward, that should maybe be the focus in the future, rather than a confusing breadth of far too many products. And I say this from someone that has several hundred bottles on his shelf. Far too much whiskey on his shelf for any normal human being. Absolutely. It's difficult for me to keep up. I suspect it's difficult for our community to keep up too. Our community can pick their favourites. They can get into the lane and stick in their lane. But I think in order for us to encourage exploration of different brands and different flavours in malt whiskey, we need to concentrate our core ranges a little bit. We need to focus in on what hard points and hard anchors that people can actually relate to and get to know and understand. It's okay to have annual releases or special releases, but if there are so many special releases, what's special about them anymore? They become ubiquitous, FOMO generators, things that are difficult to share across borders, across distances, or across communities. Dan is saying, for this question, I think having the poll open for longer matters. There's too much for people finding the poll after 3 days, but not for people already there at the first moment. That's right. And in fact, this whole session tonight, this whole vPub, was about me confessing about the size of my collection and, you know, my top 5 whiskies and everything. But it wasn't until I realized that I was overlapping and encroaching on some of the previous themes that I realized, oh, I should have prepped the poll. Like I say, I will defend it, Dan, in as much as that, and it doesn't matter whether it was the 2022 poll or the 2023-2024 poll. You tend to find that the numbers are fixed quite early. And as soon as you get 50, 100, 150 respondents, the percentages really don't change much. They're really, really fixed. Ben is saying, I have very little core range, anything in 100-ish bottles. Done them, got the t-shirt. That's not atypical. That's very, very normal for somebody that's been enjoying whiskey for as long as you are, but also with somebody with the access to the independent bottles and things that you have, Ben, as well. Inverurie Whiskey Shop, good to see you in, buddy. He's saying inaugural releases holds far more sway nowadays than new release. There can only be one inaugural, though, right? And I think that I've liked Ardnahoe's attitude. Ardnahoe had an inaugural. Then they said that they've released their first core range, which suggests it won't be their last, but they've committed to a core range, £55 release after their fairly priced inaugural. And they've put out a society release, and I think they're going to do an annual society release. So they're giving us something that we can easily connect with and understand. I'd like to see Ardnahoe from Indies. Jimmy Legg is saying independent bottles could have certainly become a much more sought after commodity, Aquaviti. I think we should be proud of being part of that. And we also need to remember that it does take us to the more granular end of things, Jimmy, which is fine. Absolutely fine. The Ginger Genius is saying there's far too much, but Thursday night's vPub creates the most FOMO for me. For that, I apologise, buddy. I am very much part of the problem, and I think we all need to be a wee bit aware of that. And Hellswood is saying, just finished Aquaviti's 14-year-old Loch Lomond. There was a big jump there, so I've missed a lot of people. Sachin, Ben was commenting things. Ginger Genius. Missed a few comments. Apologies. Let's go back up. I might need to do a wee refresh here. We've got I'll just wait till the computer settles down. Sachin is saying I have 153 bottles with 12 to 15 open. There's only so much one can drink. And yeah, it's not about quantity of drinking. It's about being able to compare and having the variety. You've done very, very well. Yeah, my computer has just bricked it. I know I'm still live because this happened before. I'll just refresh that and reopen that. And I'm right back with you again. Hello, I wish I knew what caused that. So, a lot of you have been trying to guess. There's 2 confessions left. I've got to confess what my number 1 most hoarded, most accumulated whiskey distillery is. And then I've got to go on and confess the one I'm really quite nervous about, because we are talking about the potential exposing ourselves for judgment. But if I don't do it, who's going to do it? I'm going to talk to you about the amount of bottles that I have on hand, and it's really quite shocking, if I'm honest. I think Graham Young has been the closest out of the people guessing tonight that I've picked up in the chat. At least some of you might have guessed and I missed it. But I'm going to tell everyone how many bottles I have, how many of them are open, and how many are sealed. And you can take from that what you will. Jimmy is saying, have you worked at this distillery, Aquavitae? No, Jimmy, I have not. Norpass Whiskey is saying, cheers, Roy, and everyone at work, but we'll watch this later. Tim, it's so nice to have had you in tonight. Don't work too hard, buddy, and enjoy it on the replay. In fact, Tim, welcome back now that you're watching us on the replay. Cheers to you, buddy. And I can see Alice saying, you said something a while back that made me reconsider. You said none of us are entitled to any particular bottle. This made me stop chasing, and I'm more relaxed now, more selective. Did I say those words? Okay, if I've affected your journey or your exploration of whiskey, I hope it's been in a positive way. Jimmy's saying embarrassing Aquavitae. Obviously, his little logo, his icon betrays his favourite. I would put it to you that there's a good chance that the bottles of whiskey that Jimmy has most on hand is likely to be Springbank. That's not the same for me. I have a healthy collection of Springbank. I really do. I'm very happy with it. I'm content with it. Would I like to have some more? Yes. Has that been what's happened over the years? Not so much. South of 600 bottles, Roy? Nope, absolutely not. Whiskey with Molly saying, got to be Loch Lomond. Overland Drams. Chuck is in saying, cheers, everyone. Looks like I'm late to the show again. You're never late to anything, Chuck. Good to have you in. Stevie Oz is saying the lag was where Peter Lee joined. That's right. The fan has stopped blowing on the computer and everything's working again. So the computer's just decided to go off and do something, and I don't know why. Simon Jones is saying, don't be coy, it's obviously Malt Mill at number 1. Yeah, we wish, don't we, Simon? Daniel Key is saying 250 open, 660 sealed. Daniel, you're not even close. Rick Johnson is saying Aquavitae, Johnny Walker. DVD north of 700, south of 750, I think, says Dan. No, it's going to be worse than that. I'm almost nervous to admit it now. First, my most hoarded distillery. Let's pull a wee official bottle up here first. I'm surprised at this, but then as I kind of thought about it and I extrapolated things and understood how I've connected with this distillery in recent years, it kind of makes sense. And then when I reveal it to you, it will make sense too. I have 20 of these bottles open from this distillery. And there are no duplicates. There are no duplicates. 20 are open. 18 bottles sealed. 38 bottles total from Loch Lomond. I share it with you in honesty, earnestly. It's just what the shelves have betrayed. Then it makes sense. In 2022, I did a 10-year-old release, an Aquavitae release. You guys loved it. You adored it. You asked me questions. What happened to Michael's pick? What about the sister cask? What about these? So in 2023, sorry, 2024 last year, 2 years later, we released the sister cask and we released Michael Henry's original pick so that you could have them together. Michael Henry's was a 14-year-old from refill, and the sister cask was the cask 736, I think, going from memory now, 12-year-old first fill bourbon. It was wonderful to experience. So I've obviously got some of those here sealed for future enjoyment. So that counts towards these sealed bottles, these 18 sealed bottles. But what I've also got is a confession about a fetish that I have for the distillery editions. Every single distillery edition that's been released, and we're up to 7 now, I've bought a bottle for drinking and a bottle for keeping. That's a rare thing for me. It's a new thing that I'm trying to get my head around. I didn't even do that for Flora and Fauna. I didn't do that for any of the things that I've loved, but I've started to do it for the Loch Lomond distillery editions. So I've got 7 of those sealed that just are those. The one that I've got here, the official bottle here, is the Steam and Fire, which is a non-age statement, but this is a fully natural Loch Lomond, 46% ABV, natural colour, celebrating the fact that Loch Lomond has an on-site cooperage as well. They cooper their own casks. Loch Lomond, in the space of less than a decade, has gone from easy to ignore bottom shelf fodder to spectacular spirit in 1 decade. Nothing betrays that more than my own personal shelves, my own personal collection. As a ratio of single distillery, I have more dedicated to Loch Lomond in my glass loch than anything else. 22 bottles open. Sorry, 20 bottles open and 18 bottles sealed. In my last clean glass tonight, I'm going to pour, as if Helen could read my mind, one of the last drams from this wee bottle of the Aquavitae 14-year-old Loch Lomond. People often ask me what my favourite is between the 12, the 10 and the 14. I have to be honest with everyone and say the 10, the original one. But out of the ones that came out in 2024, I'm often torn. I love the spectacular fireworks, obvious, fizzy, aggressive, shouty, forward, I am here, fireworks of the fruit that pours from the 12-year-old first fill bourbon. But sometimes when I'm a wee bit more contemplative, when I want to be seduced by subtlety rather than fireworks, this wee 14-year-old brings the goods. Cheers, Helen. Lemony icing. Cool. Powdered ginger. Fresh ginger even. Oily. Creamy. Loch Lomond. If you're surprised, as my wee light switches out in the background, I don't know why. If you're surprised, know that I'm surprised too. Greg is saying, question among these, Roy, I'm curious as to how many Inchmore and Inchfad in them, because every time I've tried some, I was amazed, but still have none. They're Inchmore, there's maybe only 1 or 2 Inchmores up there. Inchfad, 1 or 2, there's a SNWS up there. There's 1 or 2 Inchmorrans up there, Greg, the fruity one from the Straight Neck Stills, as this is. I think I've got a decent spread. I should mention that the majority of those bottles, those 38 bottles, there's maybe 3 that's from independent and the rest are all official. It's just, I didn't intend to do this. It wasn't a conscious decision, but that's what I ended up with. I'm not surprised, says Ben Whiskey with Molly. Loch Lomond is fantastic. We can easily be comfortable saying that these days. David Lorenko, good to see you, David. As Aquavitae is bigger the number, maybe, but a shy but a shy reflection of how much you're here doing for this community, and for what we can just thank you in highest friendship, Slantia. Oh, what nice words, David. Thank you so much. Listen, no, I'm kind of exposing myself a wee bit. I've suggested that I'm opening myself up to a wee bit of judgment. You want to judge me for based on the bottles that I've accumulated, the top 5, whatever they may be. It just is what it is. And if I was to doctor that or change that, I would be betraying myself. And you guys, awareness is the first step. Chuck is saying, are Loch Lomond still the future of craft Scotch? Stills? Are Loch Lomond stills the future of craft Scotch? Absolutely not. The scale of Loch Lomond's malt room is huge. Not nearly as big as their grain complex, but Loch Lomond are a big distillery. The thing that makes them innovative or crafty is that how playful they can be. Swan neck pot stills, straight neck pot stills, cooling, not cooling, a copper column still that they put malted barley through, fermentation times, cut points, peated, unpeated. I mean, the variation that they've got going on, Chuck, is fabulous and innovative, but they are doing it at scale. And it's fantastic to see. Peter Lee is in. Good to see you, Peter. He's saying, I'm literally just home and settled in. I totally agree with your Loch Lomond selection. I wish Andy Widdowson a very happy birthday too. We will see you on Monday. Can we have another Loch Lomond day? It's only 8 minutes from Andy's birthday. Peter, thank you very much for the generous dram. And Jimmy Legg bought me a dram as well to say, Michael Henry has gotten in your hand and is controlling your wallet. I understand completely. He's the best. Well, the second best. Cheers. That's the funniest thing. He's gotten in my head from a whiskey maker point of view, but I suspect he will never ever judge on how many or how little Loch Lomond's I have on the shelf. In fact, I think it's more interesting for him the more diverse that we keep our glass lochs. I think that's the magic of Michael Henry, how curious the man is. Cheers, Jimmy Legg, and cheers, Peter Lee. Thank you for your drams. Cheers to you both. Right, okay, what we'll do is I'll share the big confession with you just before midnight. Then at midnight, we'll celebrate Andy's birthday, and we'll jump into the quiz at the end, and you'll all forget the crazy accumulation that I've had to face by doing this bottle count recently. Keith McKenzie's saying, keep working on them, Roy, and they may drop the colour. We continue to campaign against colour. That Steam and Fire I held up as the official bottling, natural colour. They are peated, single grains, natural colour. Lots and lots of Loch Lomond Group whiskies are coming out now with natural colour from Glen Scotia as well. But we need the core range. We need it to be a blanket policy that is natural colour across the board, and it'd be so much easier to evangelize about the entire range and not select bottles, right? Daniel Key is final guest, 300/800. Thank you, Daniel. Good to see you in, buddy. And Dave the Brave is saying, midnight already here in Sweden, so it's my birthday, 35. Genuinely, Dave the Brave's birthday as well. We've got a double birthday celebration. Let's raise a wee glass to Dave the Brave in Sweden. Many happy returns, Dave the Brave. It's nice to see you in, buddy. Happy birthday. That's terrific. Doodle the Dram, 650 for 850. No, I'm super nervous now. Okay. I'm just going to put it up there, and I'm not even going to say it out loud. So if you're listening to this podcast style, you might never know what it is. How many minutes have we got? 6 minutes before we celebrate Andy's birthday, and I can change the subject. 912 open, says Whisky Radar. 356 sealed. Finally rolling. Somebody who's guessing higher than it is. And Jimmy Lag is saying, so I guess 622 was low. Yes, absolutely. Exovry is saying, managed to finally get a bottle of Dornoch cheeky vatting of 2x Isla quarter casks. Have you heard anything about this release? Yes, I have. We were even able to taste it. I think that was the one that we tasted a couple of weeks ago in Glasgow, and it was gorgeous. The dram of the night for lots of people. I hope you're enjoying it. Okay, let's get the confession up there. my final confession for the night. This is the bottle count in the vPub as we go live on the 6th of February 2025. Open bottles, sealed bottles. If I go back, I made some notes about what I admitted to you the numbers were back in the January 2022. So we go back 3 years ago now when we first did this topic. We talked about Confessions of a Whiskey Botherer. I had 409 bottles open and 133 sealed. When we revisited it in November 2022, later that year, I had 412 open, so it was stable, but sealed bottles had built up considerably at 160. So I went from 542 to 572 bottles. What I can tell you now with this new number, I should just say it for those of you who are listening to it, podcast style. 715 bottles open and 200 sealed. If we divide that, if we work it out by month that's happened since then, which is an interesting exercise to do, I can tell you that I have managed to accumulate 12 bottles per month since November 2022. 12 bottles per month. That's a lot. 144 bottles per year. Now, I have an excuse, if you like. I want to declare to everyone that I don't feel any anxiety over the amount of bottles that I've accumulated. I don't worry about them spoiling or going flat or going off. I've realized that the alternative is to try and consume them in a hurry or to try and figure out a different way to deal with them. I've got an infinity cast project going on that can help a little bit. But generally, it's an incidental fact of what I do. If I want to share with you the latest releases of X, if I want to compare the latest releases of X to the peers on the shelf, if I want to do projects where I compare different things or I do deep dives on specific topics or ideas, it inevitably means that the right thing to do would be to buy the bottles in order to do that thing justice. There's an incidental overaccumulation that happens from that. And I've ended up with this amount of bottles. I've increased my sealed amount of bottles, 133 to 160 to 200. It's a lot to do with the bottles I've released, and I'm keeping memento bottles and things like that. But generally, it also means that I've been hoarding things that I know is going to disappear. Speyburn, Thompson Brothers TBBSW, those kind of things. I've kept a few bottles extra of that. I don't know. I'm not immune to hoarding. But this is the truth. These are the facts. And if somebody is going to be spouting and critiquing and shouting about whiskey week after week after week, like I do, I hope it's somewhat of a reassurance to you that I am buying the bottles in order to back up that shouting, spouting, and all the nonsense. Okay, what's the reactions? 800 open, more than enough for a recycled review, says Behead. Okay, 862, they're still guessing. Any danger of whiskey pushing any of the kids out of the house already? Nope. My wife hasn't even... She doesn't complain about the whiskey in the house anymore. It's just become a thing. Peter Lee is saying, I just poured a Loch Lomond Edition 7 to celebrate along with you. And it's a peach, isn't it, Peter? Dropping in to say hello, says, make a dram decision. Good to have you here. That's about twice the bottles I have Aquavita. You've still got a handsome collection, no doubt. Dave the Brave, hell yeah, let's go for 1,000 in 2025. That's the thing, Dave. I think it's an inevitability. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, amazing, Roy. You beat me, but how many other spirits could be interesting? Yeah, spirits, it's been a thing. I've got mezcal, I've got tequila, I've got rum, I've got Armagnac, I've got cognac, I've got brandy, but they tend to be one or two. Nothing is just... I do enjoy a wee step change, but nothing has distracted me fully from whiskey. Keith McKenzie is saying, all this Loch Lomond talking I've heard, had to pour a dram of the Barfly's 14-year-old as a final nip for the night slancher, now ready for the quiz. Well, Since it's in my glass too, what I'm going to do is wait until it hits midnight. Do you think you'll ever have less or more than Peter and Denise Lee? I'm not going to compare ever. Let's, if we are going to talk about the Peter and Denise Lee, let's talk about how super cool they are as people. And a drama from Graham Young to say I have about half of what you have in bottles, and most are open or need to be. And I have the only excuse that I love it all. Cheers to opened and shared bottles. Cheers to that indeed. Love the sentiment. Thank you so much, Raphael Nardi, as well, celebrating being a member for 34 months. No sealed bottles here. Cheers, Roy. Cheers to that, Raphael. Over in Portugal, right? Of course, yeah. Jimmy Legg in Canada and Graham Young in Canada. Thank you all. And as we strike midnight, all that we have to do is raise a glass for Dave the Brave in Sweden, of course, and our pal Andy, who's been in from the beginning with our Helen. Many happy returns, Dave the Brave, and a very, very happy birthday. Finally, now it's here. I can't give you a birthday gift in the quiz at the end. Andy and Helen, you need to earn that. But in the meantime, many happy returns. Cheers. Good stuff. Good stuff. So judge me as you like. That's what's happened here. When I hit just over 800 bottles, actually before that, let's go back a wee bit. When I hit 600 or 700 and there were bottles on the floor, I had to build a new cabinet here, and I relaid out everything. And then that was when I went to Springbank, which would have been 2023, September 2023. And then at the end of last year, which was only a year later, I needed more space again. It started to overspill, and I built a different cabinet outside of this room to take care of overspill bottles. And that's how I'm dealing with it. It might get to the point that once that becomes full, then I start having to forcibly manage it. I really need to start looking at the bottles that are on the shelf and saying how many of these are valid anymore. How many of these are relevant to be reference bottles, part of your library of experience, or all of these things. Some bottles will inevitably have given their time and they need to give up their space to something else. I might need to become much more of a disciplinarian, but right now I'm a little bit chilled about it. I'm curious, says Exovery, saying, I'm curious if you have any bottles that you are hesitant to open or protective of. Yes, I admitted earlier tonight in the vPub, memento bottles like bottle number 1 of the Aquavitae bottles, for example. There are one or two kind of, it's nothing to do with the liquid, it's to do with the thing. It's become a sentimental object rather than a bottle of liquid. But it's not even, I can count, and I don't need this many fingers to count that. The rest of them are easy to open. Do you have a favourite courier? No, but all the couriers know me, Jimmy. They know me, and they know exactly what they're bringing every time they visit the door as well. So there we have it. In summary, we are still facing difficult times. The pendulum needs to swing further. Prices are still a little bit overinflated. People are still holding out for their chunk. They want their money. They want their... It's about time that they need to move on. I hope that independent bottlers start to get access to slightly cheaper stock. I know it doesn't help them with the stock that they've got on hand, but hopefully they're strong enough so that things balance out in time. Official bottlings need huge attention. Official bottlings are in trouble right now because there's far too much of it, far too much variation. And what is there, the anchors that we understand and know well, are often easily beaten by independent bottlers that can show your spirit much better than you can, and you are the guardians of the distilleries. You need to force yourselves to look at natural malt whiskey. You need to find a way of making it more engaging, more flavour forward. You need to think about the long term. Right now it's too expensive and it's too dull. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Prices need to come down. Prices need attenuation. They really do. That needs to continue. We will be here regardless of what the industry brings us. expensive and exclusive, cheap and everywhere, ubiquitous. We'll be here. And as a community, we'll find where the value is. We'll uncover it, and that's what we'll shout about. And as we're shouting about it, we will inevitably end up with something that is an overaccumulation of the good stuff. And if we ever need to work out what that is, all we need to do is turn around and look at our shelves. And if the shelves back up where we've got that value, that engagement, that deliciousness, then we should share it with our peers, our other whiskey botherer pals. And we should invite them to share what they've discovered that they love as well. And I guarantee you, often it's not going to align with the official offerings from all of the distilleries and guardians that are in charge right now. Profit and power's turning the world. We can lean against the spin. Dan is saying, I know my mailman as well, and he knows me. Heavy boxes every now and then with huge liquor store labels printed on them as part of the job, saying, keep this way up, right? And Greg in Paris is saying, we all know and enjoy your empty bottles recycled reviews, but did you hesitate sometimes to get rid of very special, unreplaceable bottles so you keep them? I did for a few. Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. We know that it is, Greg, and some of them are like this much left. But you know what? We finish them off, and nostalgia means that the memory of those bottles only increases with time, right? Helen is saying, to coin a phrase, you're all much loved. And Andy says a huge thanks. Fantastic, Andy. Happy birthday, buddy, again. Come on, quiz, I'm knackered. All right, enough chitty chat. This is going to be one brutal quiz at the end, I think. I'm never sure. Keep your eye on the questions. Keep your eye on how the questions are phrased. Keep your eye on a potential theme, all of these things. Keep your eye on the banana skins, the asshats, everything. Keep your wits about you, even, Ben, if you're feeling a wee bit knackered. Remember, it's multiple choice. You're only playing against yourselves. You know the drill. It's the quiz at the end. Joe Smith is saying, nice hue and cry quote. Oh, you star, Joe. You and I can be friends. Do you know that? Question 1. Which of these statements is true about Scapa on Orkney? We're looking for statements about Scapa. A, it was closed in the 1990s. Oh my goodness. All right. Sometimes if you're in a rush to do something, you make a very good job because you're focused and you're dialed in. Sometimes when you've got lots and lots and lots of time to do a good job on something, like you really want to put effort into a quiz and you really want to have the theme working and everything. What I was trying to do tonight is, rather than give you all the freebie so everyone gets a 1 out of 1, is make it a banana skin and make it just a 2 out of 3 tonight. And then I went and left the green ticks in. Wee bit annoyed at myself, but do you know what's fun about that? Is that you get what you should have had anyway. Everybody gets the freebie to begin with. Scapa and Orkney was A, closed in the 1990s, B, it uses a Lomond still, or C, its first official release wasn't until 2007 as a 16-year-old. Now, I was imagining that everyone was going to say A, B, and C, but there's a banana skin there, one of them's wrong, and the original first official bottling from 2007 was actually a 14-year-old. That was the banana skin, but A and B were still correct. Regardless, everyone gets 1 out of 1 for the first one. I hope I've not made the same mistake with all the time I had for the following questions. That's the thing about doing it live. You can't edit it out. Question 2. In which of these Speyside distilleries can you visit drum maltings as part of the tourist experience? Drum maltings, eh? A, Glenord, B, Rose Isle, C, Speyburn. Will they all be this easy, says Rick Johnson. Just giving you them, buddy. In a situation like that, what if you answered A, B, C? you take the points, Peter. That's the rules of the vPub. If I make a mistake on the question and any of the questions on the vPub quiz at the end, everybody gets a freebie. And Mike Molasses, the effort is still appreciated. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I think it's rare. Back in the early days, I used to get a lot of these questions wrong, and I used to make wee mistakes everywhere, but it's less likely these days. Chris Pollack is asking a freebie, absolutely. Peter is saying now that is brutal, and Ian Bruce is saying that is the birthday present, absolutely. Yeah, like a positive spin you all put on it as well, thank you. First 10 out of 10 for everyone is Whiskey Hog. I'm not quite there yet. I think you're going to have to do a wee bit of more work. Too slow is saying thank you, Aquavite. You're welcome, Rob. Okay. In which of these Speyside distilleries can you visit Drum Maltings as part of the tour experience? Of course, you can visit Drum Maltings at Glen Ord, but that's in the Highlands. Rose Isle, no, I don't even think you can visit Rose Isle at all. They certainly don't have a visitor experience. But Speyburn, they do have a visitor centre open now for the last couple of years, and you can visit the now silent Drum Maltings, but still would be fascinating. I've not been there myself. I'd love to go. So if you answered C, give yourself a point. We go on to 3. Question 3. What is likely to happen to Speyside Distillery later this year? What will happen to Speyside Distillery? It's not just a region. There's a distillery called Spey, and obviously the brand Spey comes from Speyside Distillery. A. Speyside Distillery will celebrate 30 years of distilling. B. Speyside Distillery will see a huge expansion, doubling its current output. Or C. Speyside Distillery will close. What will happen in 2025? Justin Mann is saying good morning, Roy and everyone. Just going off to work. We'll catch everything on replay, Slancha. Well, I hope you've had a nice time picking it up on replay, Justin. It's nice to have you in. I hope it's Friday night or Saturday night or something, an evening for you where you can sit and pick this up with a dram in hand, buddy. Nice to have you in. Lassie Hort Oatsman is here. Good to have you in, buddy. Big Ed, Daisy Vleeland is here. Fantastic. Vasio Glagola. Fantastic. Vasio, good to see you. Joe Smith, Hellswood, James Costigan, Glenn Epsy Klaus is in. Good to see you, Glenn. Bruce Bernard. Where's Roy? Roy Ovimere in Norway. Kyle Taylor, still here. Joe's Whiskey Den. That looks like a new name, Joe's Whiskey Den. That sounds like a nice place to be in your Whiskey Den. Fantastic. Most of you are absolutely correct that a Speyside Distillery later this year will be forced to close their lease on the land and the distillery buildings and everything itself. The equipment and everything they'll be able to take about 10 or 12 miles down the road, and by the time that 2026 closes out, I think it'll probably slip into 2027. They'll have a new distillery, but that distillery there will close. Crazy. Only took them 30 years to build it. Question 4, which of these distilleries uses a worm tub? I'm going to give you 3 distilleries, and I need you to find the one that uses a worm tub. Oh no. Oh my goodness me. I'm trying really hard to be challenging and good. And oh, Roy, were you asleep? What's worse is I can't even go forward to check that this hasn't happened more. You would have all got this anyway, right? Nakandu, of course, Nakandu is a Diageo distillery. Diageo do have a lot of worm tub distilleries, but Nakandu is not one of them. Knockdo distillery, Anok is a worm tub distillery. Brora, Renaissance distillery, has worm tub. Springbank distillery, one of the spirit stills, has a worm tub. Both of them are correct. If you were thinking about answering Nakandu, you're not going to answer now. It's a freebie for everyone again. I need to do this when I'm in a rush, when I'm under pressure, and I'm in a focus. That's tremendously embarrassing. And I can't go forward and change anything or correct anything because it's all uploaded to the broadcast software. So no changes will take effect. Let's just roll with it. Well done. That's 2 out of 2. Nobody's going to get less than 2 tonight. As we go into the picture question at the end, we're looking at a twin pagoda roof here. How many of you are laughing? And I'm just going to ask you which town this distillery is located in. Are we in Keith? Are we in Alness? Or are we in Pitlochry? Keith in Speyside, Alness in the Northeast Highlands, or Pitlochry in the Southern Highlands? Where are we as we look at these 2 pagoda roofs? Stop sharing and check. Well, it's one way to do it. I can do that now, but I don't want to take it off the screen. Let's see. But honestly, it doesn't matter. As I say to you, it's already uploaded, so we just have to roll with it. I'm not going to be able to change it, but I could perhaps speak it to you. Can you do that for the assets, says Helen? Just one more, and I've got a pass mark. You're so kind, Roy. Thanks again. I agree with it's just, oh dear. Okay, it doesn't matter. Menno must be climbing the walls, says Julian Rickman. We need to get Menno back again to straighten things up. Too slow, Robbie saying, Roy, I love you. David Larenko saying, another middle-aged moment, lol. I'm having a few of them today. It's crazy that it's when I've got plenty of time to make a quiz, put thought into it, make it quite structured and themes. And yeah, it's crazy the way the middle-aged mind works. Okay. Need to get Whiskey with Molly back, says Whiskey with Molly. We'll look at twin roofs here. Let's see what Whiskey with Molly is at Strathyla. I haven't got a 10, so just going to help other people. Sugar Kitty is in saying, I've seen this one before. Well, if it's Strathyla, then it's Strathyla in Keith and Speyside, Alness in the Northeast Highlands, or Pitlochry in the Southern Highlands. Ben is spot on. It is absolutely Strathyla Distillery here with the twin pagoda roofs, and it is the famous, most photographed apparently. This is exactly the angle that tends to be most photographed as well, of Strathyla and Speyside, which is in Keith. Lots of you with 5 out of 5. Ian Bruce, Jerry Miller, Joe Smith, George P, Big Ed, Rick Johnson, Ginger Genius, Where's Roy, Daisy Vleeland, Danny Hebbington, Lachlan McKenzie, Hellswood, Too Slow, loads and loads of you on 5 out of 5. Amazing. Let's go into the trickier questions. Which of these is understood to be a key component of the famous J&B blended Scotch? J&B, the yellow and red branding, it's always been around, ubiquitous blended Scotch whisky. Which of these 3 distilleries do we understand is a key component? A, Strathyla, B, Strathmill, C, Strathclyde. Whiskey Slayer is saying, this is definitely going to be the highest scoring 10 out of 10 ever. Well, Whiskey Slayer, nice to have you in. Slow down a wee bit. Might be some tricky, sticky carpets to traverse before we get to that 10 out of 10. There might be an asset at the end, of course. My dad's favourite blend it was, says Graham Young. Fernando saying, I was hoping to see Knockandu here. No, there's 3 Straths on the screen. Lachlan McKenzie is going with the flow with a B. It's Strath something, says Mike Molasses. It is indeed. Fernando's going B then. Absolutely. Everybody's suggesting that it's B, Strathmill. Why? Well, because Strathyla has just been up there. That's a Pernod Ricard distillery. J&B is a Diageo blend. Strathclyde is a grain complex. Could be a significant component of a blend. But of course, it's also a Chivas brother Pernod Ricard brand. Strathmill is understood to be a significant component of the famous J&B blended Scotch. Well done, Barflies. Always on the ball, doing very, very well. Question 7, which of these 21st century Highland malt distilleries is the oldest? I'm going to give you 3 distilleries. Tell me which is the oldest. A, Lindores Abbey. B, Isle of Harris. C, Strathearn. Lots and lots and lots of 6 out of 6. The Aussie distillery Struthmill, is Ian Bruce is saying. Whiskey Hog thinks this is C. Sharmila Suze thinks it's C. Keith McKenzie thinks it's C. And Vasil thinks it's C. Whiskey with Molly saying 100% C. 100% C. Whiskey with Molly is absolutely determined to help the crowd tonight. He's been a team player. So if you're on the fence and you think it's anything else, Whiskey with Molly is absolutely putting his reputation on the line to suggest that it's Strathearn. Well, I can tell you, read the question, 21st Century Highland Malt Distilleries, Lindores Abbey is in Fife, and it was founded in 2015. Isle of Harris, 2015, although it is in the Highlands, despite being an island distillery. Strathearn, 2013, Whiskey with Molly Ben, and the majority of everyone else is spot on. Surely it's going to get trickier now. Far too many of you enjoying a 7 out of 7. I would love to know what slipped, what banana skin took care of Ben tonight, Whiskey with Molly. Question 8. Malt whiskey spirit had not been produced in which of these famous Scottish cities from 1852 until very recently in 2023? So what's the maths there? 148 years, 171 years. Which city are we speaking about? A, Stirling, B, Inverness, C, Falkirk. One of those 3 cities did not have whiskey produced in it for 171 years until 2023. It always gets tough. There will always be attrition towards the end. The whiskies in the glasses tonight have been absolutely delicious. I know exactly why I have an overaccumulation of these 5 distilleries. Clynelish, Caol Ila, Kilkerran, Ardnamurchan, and Loch Lomond. Splitting the crowd, you're all over the place on this one. It's really tricky. The banana skin's in there for a reason, because there's an obvious thing because of the marketing and the stories that were about this. Yeah. Falkirk, Rosebank, closed in the 1990s. It's reopened again. So it's not that. Inverness, Ullivest is now producing in the centre of Inverness again. But we had Milburn, Glenalbyn and Glenvore as recently as the 1980s. Stirling opened in 2023. A distillery that was previously making other spirits started making whiskey in Stirling again, which is the first time since 1852. If you answered A, give yourself a point. Really, really tough one there, but we're getting close to the end. Another tricky one coming in is a penultimate question. Which of these distilleries was used as a naval base during the First World War, housing Admiral Jellicoe and his fleet? We're looking for a naval base from the First World War. A, Pulteney, B, Glenglassaugh, or C, Scapa? Steve Atkiss is on an 8. Greg's Whiskey Guide, and fantastic, on an 8. Where's Roy in Norway on an 8? Marku Makin, and I think that looks like a Finnish name, but I don't want to guess. But Marku's on an 8. The Ginger Genius is on an 8. Danny Hebbington on an 8. David Lorenko, Chris Pollack on 8. Ted Brooks, Daniel Key, Rick Johnson, Nicholas, Vasil, Joe Smith, Pete Head, Dan, Big Ed, Dave the Brave, Ian Bruce. So many 8s. I thought that was going to derail a lot of you, but my goodness. How can you know this stuff? How can you be this on it? Billy Abbott is in suggesting C. Well, there's somebody in right now who that you might want to, Billy, keep your answers until the very last moment, because I suspect That's rude to the community, actually. They're already very, very knowledgeable, but I suspect a lot of folk would follow the Billy Abbotts of the world. Billy, it's nice to have you in here, fella. I hope you're keeping well. Thanks for joining us. Billy thinks it's sea scappa. I can tell you that Billy, along with the vast majority of you, Bill at Whisky with Molly saying, fun fact, the German U-boat fleets are ending on the coast in Northern Ireland where my granda worked at Ballykelly. My goodness. Well, Jellicoe and his fleet was part of the Battle of Jutland out there off the coast of Norway back in the First World War. And as everyone has guessed, absolutely perfect, or they know, it's Scappa. We're talking about Scappa on Orkney. That one's right out of the Malt Whisky Yearbook. As we go into the ass hat at the end, how are we doing for the nines? Lots of nines tonight. I know I've been helpful, but I tended to help on the easier questions, right? Too Slow Rob, Kyle Taylor, Ian Bruce, Dave the Brave, Pete Head, Danny Hebbington, Marku, Vasil, Big Ed, Chris Pollack, Steve Atkiss, Nicholas, Dan, Ginger Genius, David Lorenko, where's Roy? My goodness, Rick Johnson. Okay, Pete, we're in such good shape for a 10, lots of 10 out of 10s tonight. Okay, how tough have we made the ass hat at the end? Remember, the ass hat, you have to know the answer to two things. It's deliberately meant to be awkward and horrible, and yeah, by definition, an ass hat question. A, how many Scotch malt distilleries begin with the letter S? A, is it the same as the number as Scotch malt distilleries owned by William Grants? B, the age statement on Glendronach's discontinued the Healing? Or C, the Scotch malt micro distilleries listed in the 2025 Malt Whisky Yearbook? How many S distilleries are there? You might notice that the three answers to this ass hat is familiar. That was the exact same three answers I gave you as options in last week's vPub quiz at the end. Whether that helps you or not, I'm not sure. But maybe if you're stuck, there has been a theme to tonight's quiz. It would have certainly helped you answer the question number 9. Every single question has revolved around distilleries beginning with the letter S tonight. Last week it was all to do with lochs in the name. All through 2025 so far, I've enjoyed making quizzes with a theme. I'm not going to tell you what the theme is, but if you figure out the theme, it might help you towards the harder questions at the end. But here we go. How many S Scotch malt distilleries are there? Same as the number of Scotch malt distilleries owned by Willie Grants. Same as the age statement on Glendronach's discontinued the Healing, or Scotch malt micro distilleries listed in the 2025 Malt Whisky Yearbook. I'll tell you that there are 4 William Grant distilleries. The Healing was an 8-year-old, and micro distilleries is a new category in this year's yearbook. It numbers 8. I counted around 7 to 8 and probably missed a couple more, says Fernando. Fernando, you're spot on. 8 is the number. I am surely helping a lot of people to reach that magical 10 out of 10 tonight. Let's bring out the Malt Whisky Yearbook as you're typing in your score, and I'll read out the 8 S distilleries as St. Magdalene's obviously closed. That wasn't one of them. But we have Scappa, Speyburn, Speyside, Springbank, Stirling, Strathearn, Strathyla, and Strathmill. 8 distilleries. Who's celebrating their 10 out of 10 tonight? Let's see. A lot of you. It's a busy night for the big hitters. Too Slow Rob, well done, 10 out of 10. Joe Smith, 10 out of 10. Ian Bruce, 10 out of 10. Dan DVDW, 10 out of 10. Lassie Otsman, 10 out of 10. Is this a record? Pete Head, 10 out of 10. Hip Hip Hooray. Daniel Key, 10 out of 10. Big Ed, 10 out of 10. You guys are either getting far too knowledgeable or the quizzes are getting a wee bit soft and easy. It doesn't help when I give things away. Vasil is on a 10 out of 10. Dave the Brave, The Birthday Dream, 10 out of 10. You're welcome. Where is Helen and Andy? Nicholas, 10 out of 10. Ted Brooks, 10 out of 10. Chris Pollack, Marku, 10 out of 10. Rick Johnson celebrating a 10 out of 10 as well. I can't even keep up. There's so many of you. 9 out of 10 for Daisy. Got the ass hat right, though. That's good enough, Daisy. David, 10 out of 10, fantastic. Greg's Whiskey Guide, where Royal Vermeer, I think lots of people are typing it in twice now. Danny Hebbington, thank you, crowd. Daisy is saying congrats to the 10 out of 10s. George P is saying congrats. Gino is saying congrats. Fantastic. So many of you. Steve Atkins saying, does that mean 10 out of 10? Listen, if I've forgotten to mention anybody who managed a 10 out of 10 tonight, I apologize. Fantastic work. Such knowledgeable people, but it doesn't help if I take a tricky quiz and make it easier by giving you the answers like I did tonight. Fab vPub, thanks again for Andy's birthday wishes, says Helen. Only 8 out of 10 tonight, Aquavita. Hey, you can't win them all, Helen. Peter Lee's celebrating a 10 out of 10, but more like an 8 out of 10. You can take it if you want, Peter. But aye, fantastic. Look after Andy for his birthday tomorrow, won't you, Helen? And Ixovary is saying, will we ever know what the 2 Ardnamurchan refill casks consisted of? We will only ever drink and enjoy them, Ixovary. Thanks for your inquiry. Gino Kumo is saying you have a fantastic weekend, buddy. Cheers. Thank you very much, Gino. Thank you to you. I'm looking forward to having a good weekend. Listen, a wee bit of an announcement for next week. There's a chance that we might have to take a break next week. It's half term here. Feels like the kids are only just back at school and they're breaking up for half term. But there's some things at play that might mean that I have to take a wee break next week. We may be going away on a wee family trip, which means I'm not around on the Thursday night. If that changes, you'll see the vPub scheduled as normal, but just keep your eye out. If there is somebody else that's going to step in for a pop-up vPub, I'll be sure to share with patrons first, of course, and then in the Barflies group and everywhere else on the YouTube channel and things like that as well. Keep your eyes out. But if I'm not here next week, know that it's scheduled and it's planned, and it's not because I'm poorly or anything. It might be that I take a wee break next week. If I'm here and at home, regardless of the family condition of the holiday condition of the family, I will be here with you for another session next week. Until then, I'm going to raise this glass and remind you all that you're very dearly loved, and I look forward to hanging out with you either next week or 2 weeks from now. And until then, thank you for hanging out with me for another Thursday night vPub. Congratulations to all the 10 out of 10s. Thank you for your candid honesty on the scale of your collections, your hopes for the future, and your feelings and mood right now. Until the next time, Slanchava.